Chapter 76, Wood Human Technique. When Roger and Banner drove to Canada on the Chevrolet, General Ross also received a piece of information about his daughter. After leaving Roger, Dr. Ross went directly to the airport and bought a ticket to Canada. Shortly after Dr. Ross bought the ticket, General Ross received a report. General Ross told Dr. Ross the information that Banner was locked up in S.H.I.E.L.D. In addition to Dr. Ross being his daughter, there was another reason. He also hoped Roger would get Banner out of S.H.I.E.L.D's base. General Ross couldn't go to S.H.I.E.L.D's side to take him out, but he would not give up on Banner just like that. Banner was the only successful experimental subject at the moment, so no matter what, he would not hand Banner over to S.H.I.E.L.D. Although General Ross did not know what Roger would do, he was sure that this fellow, known as a private detective, definitely had a way to bring Banner out of S.H.I.E.L.D's base. The scene at Culver University left a deep impression on him and strengthened his determination to capture Banner. Only with a human-shaped weapon like the Hulk could he fight against those mutants who had extraordinary abilities. "General, Bruce is here." Just as General Ross instructed the intelligence personnel to continue monitoring Ross, Blonsky was led by his assistant to his office. After bringing Blonsky to the office, the assistant left and closed the door. "You saw the scene at Culver University, right? What do you think about it?" General Ross asked directly. "I saw two uncontrollable and powerful, dangerous entities. At the same time, I was worried about whether the army could eliminate these two dangerous entities." As the witness at that time, Blonsky gave a very official answer. "How old are you this year?" 45 years old. General Ross suddenly changed the topic and asked. 39 years old. Blonsky told his actual age. "You get old quickly, right?" "That's right." "Then don't do any more missions. With your record, you can be a colonel," General Ross suggested. "No, I am a warrior. I will always be." Regarding General Ross' suggestion, Blonsky did not even think before directly rejecting it. Then he continued, "If I had my current experience 10 years ago, I would definitely not fight myself." Seeing the determination in Blonsky's eyes, General Ross hesitated for a few seconds before saying, "I can make you stronger." After hearing General Ross' answer, there was a look of excitement in Blonsky's eyes. During the Second World War, the Weapon Research Department conducted a new experiment. The Biological Power Enhancement Experiment hopes to create a super soldier. Based on the previous experiment, I restarted the relevant experiment. Banner participated in the early stages of this work, but he did not know we were weaponizing this research. He thought he was studying the method of resisting radiation. I never told him the truth of the experiment. But he was too confident. He conducted a human experiment on himself. There was a small accident, or rather, a wonderful accident. We discovered a type of serum with great potential. After the injection is complete, you will lead a team to capture a person called Mr. Blue. We suspect that he is the one who helped Banner escape." Since Banner returned to the car, he did not say a word to Roger. He just silently drove to Canada. Regarding Banner's silence, Roger did not care about it. He was now thinking about how to maximize the effect of the Wood Dragon technique. When he was fighting against the Hulk just now, he did not use Wood Dragon technique to the maximum power. The wooden dragon that he could currently create could reach a length of more than 30 meters. The reason why shortened the length of the wooden dragon to just 10 meters was simply that the Hulk was too small. The Hulk was only 3 meters tall, and there was no need to waste chakra to create a larger wooden dragon. A length of 10 meters was already enough. When dealing with an enemy like the Hulk, Wood Dragon technique could unleash a good effect, but this was only limited to the first time. After all, as long as he had experienced it once, the Hulk would not be able to take the initiative to run towards the wooden dragon foolishly. The wooden dragon could absorb the strength and energy of the target, but the strength and energy absorbed by the wooden dragon would not be redirected to the caster. Therefore, Roger initially planned to use the Hulk as a portable charger, but it had already failed before it even began. In addition, the wooden dragon's movement speed was not that fast. If the target was fast enough, they could still avoid it. Wood Dragon technique was more suited to be a control skill, not an attack skill. After casually eating something in the car for dinner, Roger brought the Hulk to a grass field that did not have many people. "Exercise after dinner. Let the Hulk come out." Although Banner was very reluctant, the situation was better than other people's. He still transformed into the Hulk. After coming out again, the Hulk did not rush toward Roger as rashly as he did last time. Instead, he looked at Roger with vigilance. After confirming that there was no strange wooden dragon around him, he ran towards Roger. Roger made another hand seal, but this time, he did not make the same hand seal as before. No matter what seal he made, it would not affect the ninjutsu he wanted to use. Wood release, wood dragon technique. A 10-meter-long wooden dragon with a hooked nose gushed out from the ground and pounced directly at the Hulk, who was rushing over. With the experience from the last time, the Hulk no longer had any intention of fighting with the wooden dragon. He suddenly exerted strength in his legs and jumped high. Then, under the influence of gravity, he smashed toward Roger like a green meteorite. Seeing that the Hulk had changed his tactics, Roger stopped wood dragon technique and formed another seal with his hands. When the Hulk, like a green meteorite, was about to hit Roger, a wooden man about the same size as him appeared on the ground again. The wooden man coiled around his arm. After rushing out from the ground, this wooden man did not hesitate and directly pounced on the descending Hulk. Boom! The Hulk and the wooden man fiercely collided together, and both sides bounced off and fell on both sides of Roger. After landing on the ground, the Hulk and the wooden man ran wildly again. However, the Hulk's target was Roger, and the wooden man's target was the Hulk. Just as the Hulk was about to arrive in front of Roger, the wooden man took the lead to come in front of him and sent him flying. Then, there was a fierce battle full of momentum. What a fierce fighting style! It's like a beast. Chapter 77, Dr. Stern. Hulk is a typical high attack, high defense, and high vitality opponent, combining the characteristics of warriors and tanks. Facing such an enemy head-on was not a wise choice. However, Roger did not care about this. He just wanted to test wood human technique's power. For this reason, he deliberately controlled the body of the wooden man to avoid the situation of bullying the weak. The current wooden man was only 3 meters tall and the same height as the Hulk. If he used his full strength, the wooden man's body size could reach about 10 meters. Although the Hulk's physical attack power was very strong, the wooden man in front of him was also not weak. The peak state of the wooden man was an existence that could catch the 9-tailed beast with one hand. Even if it faced a complete body Susanoo, it would still not be at a disadvantage. However, Roger could temporarily not display this peak state wooden man. Increasing the size of the wooden man to around 10 meters was already the limit he could reach right now. After controlling the wooden man, the Hulk exchanged blows with it for more than 10 minutes until Roger finally intended to end the battle. Under his control, the wooden man that was initially randomly throwing punch suddenly took a step back and avoided the fist the Hulk was throwing. Then, before the Hulk realized what had happened, the wooden man displayed his exquisite combat skills. The wooden man leaned forward and directly arrived in front of the Hulk. He launched a seemingly simple but powerful attack. Chest, left shoulder, lower abdomen, right shoulder, head. Straight punch, uppercut, left hook, elbow strike, punching knee, left shifting step, jab, holding head and top knee. In the face of the wooden man that suddenly changed the attacking style and rhythm, the Hulk was like a humanoid sandbag, constantly being repelled by the wooden man. Boom! The Hulk, whose body was unstable, did not have time to make any defense, and he was sent flying by the wooden man. After rolling a few times on the ground, the Hulk stood up again. Then, he saw the wooden man who had cupped his fists and descended from the sky. The wooden man was not a real creature and couldn't make two nimble movements. But even so, its skillful combat skills still let the Hulk experience the difference between pros and amateurs. A few minutes later, the angry Hulk once again turned back to Banner. When the Hulk disappeared, and Banner returned, Roger also stopped controlling the wooden Arhat, turning the previously mighty wooden man into a lifelike wooden sculpture. The style of fighting just now was not Roger's original creation, but he had learned it from Thanos. However, it differed from Thanos, who easily knocked out the Hulk. He was still a bit lacking in this aspect. After ending wood human technique, he checked the remaining chakra volume. One wood dragon technique and one wood human technique consumed almost 20 levels of his chakra. Wood dragon technique had consumed a little less. After all, it only lasted for a short period, so he only used 2 or 3 chakra levels. The primary consumption was from wood human technique. He had just created the wooden man, and he had already used up 2 or 3 levels of chakra. While maintaining the attack of the wooden man, he had used up more than 10 levels of chakra. This was only a 3-meter-tall wooden man. If it was a 100-meter-tall wooden man, then the amount of chakra required would be an extremely terrifying number. Roger now truly understood why this ninjutsu requires a high amount of chakra. Wood release couldn't display such an astonishing effect without a massive amount of chakra. Wood release was a bloodline limit with a massive difference in upper and lower limits. For people who used it well, tail beasts could be comparable to pets. Those who could not use it well could only play and study it in agricultural class. Change your clothes and go back to the car to sleep. We will set off tomorrow. Although Banner could not completely remember the Hulk's memories, he already knew what kind of person Roger was from those scattered memories. This man usually looked amiable, but when he moved his hands, he was crazier than anyone else. Banner did not know if it was his illusion, but he felt that the Hulk in his body seemed to be complaining about something in a grievance, whining like a giant green baby. When Banner changed into new clothes and returned to the car, Roger called out a Shadow Clone and asked Shadow Clone to look at Banner, lest he made a wrong decision in a moment of impulse. Then, he used Flying Thunder God technique and returned home. The difficult task was left to Shadow Clone and the comfortable life enjoyed by the original body. This was the right way to use Shadow Clone. Bath, eat, play the Berserker's Creed, and then sleep. Blonsky, who had received the serum injection, under the account of General Ross, took a team of fully armed Special Forces soldiers to raid New York's Grayburn College, took away Professor Samuel Stern, who was called Mr. Blue, and the blood sample of Banner in his laboratory. Looking at this cabinet after cabinet for Banner's blood samples, Bronsky's face emerged with a complex look. New York, in a military base. You can't treat me like this. I'm a cellular biologist. I want to contact my lawyer. After being brought to the interrogation room, Dr. Stern repeated his rights. He doesn't look like the person who helped Banner escape. Bloho was outside the interrogation room, peered through the one-sided glass at the impatient Dr. Stern inside, and voiced his opinion. His laboratory has a large number of Banner blood samples. Whether he helped Banner escape or not, he is someone who needs to be locked up. And I have a hunch that he can help us. General Ross said lightly, quickly deciding the fate of Dr. Stern. As for the identity of Dr. Stern as cellular biologist, he did not care about it. After General Ross left, Blonsky stood alone in front of the one-sided glass and looked at the increasingly uneasy Dr. Stern. After standing still like a puppet for more than 10 minutes, Blonsky took a deep breath and went directly to the interrogation room. Sir, the general has ordered that no one can enter without his permission. The soldier guarding the door said seriously. Then, the soldier felt a sharp pain in his heart. Before he could scream, Blonsky covered his mouth in advance and watched as the soldier's pupils began to enlarge. After doing all this, Bruce opened the door and threw the soldier's body in. He went straight to Dr. Stern. How can you kill your own man? Dr. Stern said with a trembling voice. Chapter 78, Heart-to-Heart Talk with the Hulk. Looking at the soldier's body still bleeding on the ground, Dr. Stern shouted to Blonsky. Then he saw Blonsky pull out his gun and point it at his head. What did I do to be treated so rudely by you? Under the threat of the gun, Dr. Stern's tone changed and became extremely gentle. It's not what you have done but what you must do. I want to become as strong as Banner. Hearing this, Dr. Stern stood up from his chair and slowly said, It seems that you have been injected with something. I want to become stronger, stronger than Banner. You should know how strong he is. That's right. He is powerful. He is like a god. I want to become like that too. You want to make me as strong as him. Blonsky's breathing began to become heavy, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. I don't know what's inside of you. If what is given to Bruce is mixed with it, you could become a monster. As soon as Dr. Stern finished speaking, Blonsky arrived in front of him, grabbed him and lifted him up with one hand. I didn't say I was unwilling. I just need your consent. Without any hesitation, Dr. Stern instantly admitted defeat. Then, under the command of Blonsky, the two of them arrived at the research room in the base. This place contained Banner's blood sample that was transported to Dr. Stern. Dr. Stern's computer and various instruments were packed together and transported over. Let's begin. After lying on the operating bed, Blonsky said excitedly. A few minutes later, an experimental accident occurred in the laboratory. Banner's blood sample stored in it was destroyed. Dr. Stern was also hit by the explosion and died on the spot. Blonsky is nowhere to be seen. When General Ross led the soldiers to the laboratory, they saw only the ruins of a burning laboratory. At this time, a soldier hurried to General Ross' side and reported a message in a low voice. Blonsky. Early the following day, after washing up and enjoying a sumptuous breakfast, Roger used Flying Thunder God technique to return to the car. Bang! The moment he returned, Shadow Clone turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared. The sleeping Banner woke up in a daze and then saw Roger, who was full of energy and had changed clothes. You have 10 minutes to eat breakfast. Banner sighed silently, then got out of the car and went straight to the back of the vehicle. He opened the container and randomly picked a few foods. At this time, he could no longer care about personal hygiene. After quickly eating the food in his hands, Banner started the car again and drove toward Canada. At noon, Roger used Flying Thunder God technique to return to office, arranged for Erica to go to the bank to take out Dr. Banner's money, and then took out the phone from the drawer that was answered purely by fate. There were several missed calls on the mobile phone, all of which were numbers he had never seen before, and there was also a text message. Dr. Ross called and texted to the phone. The content of the short letter was also straightforward. It was the address of a hotel in Vancouver, the capital of Canada. After reading the message, Roger called Dr. Ross and asked her to take Flying Thunder God Kunao to the forest or park on the outskirts of Vancouver. After doing all this, he used Flying Thunder God technique to return to the car. Banner was already used to Roger's ability to disappear and reappear instantly. He did not even turn to look at Roger. Stop the car here. Then let the Hulk come out. After 2 experiences, Banner was already very clear about what Roger wanted to do, so he got out of the car without saying a word and took off his coat. Under the guidance of Banner, the Hulk appeared again. Seeing Roger again, the Hulk did not attack like before. Instead, he silently took a few steps back and looked at Roger with great vigilance. Don't worry, I won't hit you today. After saying that, Roger went to the cargo box behind the car and filled a big travel bag with the fruits and meat wrapped in a vacuum seal. Then he took Kusanagi's sword to a grassland not far away from the road and sat down. After casting a super small wood dragon technique and the super small great fire annihilation, he had a bonfire. Then, under the Hulk's gaze, he inserted the meat into Kusanagi's sword and began to barbecue. We still need to wait for the meat to be cooked. If you are hungry, you can eat some fruit first. If you don't like fruit, you can also go to the cargo box to get something else. After saying that, Roger did not care about the Hulk anymore, as if he had put all his heart into the barbecue in front of him. The Hulk completely could not understand what Roger was going to do, but he did not feel any malice from Roger, so he came in front of Roger and sat down with a plop. After roasting for a few minutes, Roger handed the sword of Kusanagi to the Hulk and said calmly, "Take it. I'll go back and get something." Barbecue without seasoning was a soulless barbecue. For this reason, he used Flying Thunder God technique to return to New York and bought a set of family barbecue tools, spices, and a large box of cold beer. When he came back here, the Hulk was still holding Kusanagi's sword, and the barbecue on the upper side had noticeable scorch marks. "Give it to me." After taking back Kusanagi's sword, Roger removed the burnt meat and put it into a special barbecue tool. He began his barbecue journey again. More than 10 minutes later, he handed a piece of beef that had been roasted and opened a few bottles of frozen beer. "Do you want a bottle?" After hesitating for a few seconds, the Hulk took Roger's beer bottle. Compared to the Hulk's colossal palm, the beer bottle was as small as a toy. "Compared to Banner, I prefer to deal with you." After saying that, Roger took a bite of the roasted meat in his hand. The taste was quite good. Banner is too sharp and clear, and he is more like a scholar than a warrior. Of course, you are not a warrior, but at least you are better than Banner. You know how to fight. Although the Hulk was not as bright as Banner, he also had his wisdom, so he completely understood what Roger was talking about. Hulk doesn't like fight. Hulk just doesn't want to get hurt. Hulk to protect himself. Looking at the harmless Roger in front of him, the Hulk spoke out his thoughts. At the same time, he copied Roger's actions, eating the roasted meat in his hand and drinking beer. If you want to protect yourself, you must be strong enough. Your body contains a powerful force, but you don't know how to use it. If you want to become stronger, I can teach you. Chapter 79, False Memory. Moving wood? Blue ball. The Hulk put down the barbecue in his hand and used his hand to compare the appearance of Roger when he displayed Big Ball Ray's Nan. It's not those. It's more suitable for you to practice physical skills, or in other words, combat skills. Even if Roger was willing to teach wood release and Ray's Nan, the Hulk could not learn it because the Hulk did not have chakra. However, Even if the Hulk had chakra, Roger could not teach him wood release and raise Nan. Wood release was bloodline limit, not someone he could teach just because he wanted to. On the other hand, raise Nan needed excellent chakra control, which was also unsuitable for the Hulk. If the Hulk really had chakra, then the most suitable thing for him was the peak of body technique, Taijutsu, 8 inner gates formation. The Hulk, who had opened the 8 gates, Roger was excited just by thinking about it. Body technique. The Hulk was not very clear about what body technique was. Body technique relies on the body to directly attack. The type of attack you usually use belongs to body techniques. Body technique is just a name. If you like, you can also call it close quarter combat. After eating the last piece of barbecue on the barbecue fork, Roger stood up and came to Hulk. Although the Hulk was sitting on the ground at this time, he was still taller than Roger. Just as he was about to stand up, Roger stopped him. You can sit. Because of the time, I can't personally demonstrate it to you, but I can teach you another way. Relax, don't try to resist it. As soon as his voice fell, Roger's eyes turned into Sharingan. After seeing Roger's Sharingan, the Hulk recalled some bad memories. I will leave you an illusion teaching scene. This illusion will not harm you. When you have time or Banner controls the body, you can use the time to learn. Although the Hulk did not understand what an illusion teaching scene was, he believed in his intuition at this time. He believed that Roger would not hurt him. When the Hulk took the initiative to cooperate, Roger smoothly left an illusion teaching scene in his mind. To engrave this illusion teaching scene into the memory of the Hulk permanently, for the first time, Roger used the power of the Sharingan to the limit. The scene created by Genjutsu was forever engraved in the target's memory. He had learned this small skill by chance when he was recently studying Genjutsu, Sharingan. He originally planned to develop a Genjutsu which could make the target fall into an illusion forever, but the result was that he massively failed. When the power of the Sharingan he left in the target was exhausted, the target would get rid of the illusion, and their consciousness would return to the real world. Although the research and development failed, it also taught him many things. This technique that permanently engraved the illusion into the target's memory was one of the small products. For this reason, he also gave this small technique that could not be directly used in battle a very easy to understand name. Genjutsu False Memory. Because there was no need to maintain the illusion all the time, and there was no need to isolate the target's perception of the outside world all the time, the chakra consumption of this Genjutsu was not very large. The only thing he needed to pay attention to was to strengthen this illusion constantly so that the target would remember everything in the illusion realm forever, or it would be completely blurred after a while. Roger's illusion for the Hulk at this time was an arena the size of a football field, with 2 Hulk fighting in the arena. These 2 Hulks are both proficient in boxing, Muay Thai, sparring, Israeli fighting arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the US Special Forces SCARS fighting method. They could not feel tired, could not get hurt, and fought over and over again. To put it simply, this was like a real combat teaching video which was created with the Hulk as the model. How much the Hulk could learn from this would depend on his comprehension ability. After permanently engraving this illusion teaching scene into the Hulk's memory, Roger's eyes returned to normal. You should learn this now. If there is a chance in the future, I will teach you a top-level body technique called inner 8 gates formation. Although he said this, even Roger did not know how to use inner 8 gates formation at this time. Moreover, more importantly, he did not know how to make the Hulk have chakra. Although the Hulk did not know what inner 8 gates formation was, his intuition told him it must be a very powerful body technique. The following time, after Roger and the Hulk finished eating the rest of the roasted meat and fruits, Roger finally received a call from Dr. Ross. Get up. I'll take you to a place. Not long after the Hulk stood up, Roger targeted Flying Thunder God Kunao in Dr. Ross' hand and then disappeared with the Hulk. After hanging up the phone, Dr. Ross anxiously held Flying Thunder God Kunao, constantly turning his head to look around. She followed Roger's instructions and brought Flying Thunder God Kunao to a forest in the suburb of Ottawa. Just as she was thinking about when Roger and Banner would appear, she suddenly saw a green giant in front of her. Banner. Although Dr. Ross knew Banner could transform into a green giant, she could not help but take a few steps back after seeing the Hulk with her own eyes. After bringing the Hulk over, Roger did not look at Dr. Ross. Instead, he directly opened the system's commission page. Mission content: stop the Hulk from destroying New York and send him to Canada. Mission status: complete. Mission reward: 50 ninja coins. Number of available ninja coins, 74. After confirming that the systems completed the commission, Roger turned to the Hulk and said, "Let Banner out. Take time to practice fighting. The next time we meet, you must become stronger." The Hulk turned to look at Roger. He did not speak and silently returned his body to Banner. When the Hulk became Banner again, Dr. Ross ran over and hugged Banner, whose clothes had been completely torn. "The commission is over. You can return the Kunao to me." Roger had just received Flying Thunder God Kunao from Dr. Ross when his phone rang. It was an unknown number. After the call was connected, he heard Natasha's voice. "What did you do? Why did a green giant appear again? Wait, why are you in Canada? You were just..." Roger did not answer Natasha and directly hung up the phone. This was the reason why he did not want to carry his mobile phone with him. These electronic products were too overstepped on privacy. Another green giant? Could it be Abomination? Looking at Banner and Dr. Ross, who hugged each other tightly, Roger coughed softly and said quietly, "S.H.I.E.L.D. has already located this place. If you don't want to be caught again, I suggest you leave immediately." Chapter 80, Abomination appears. After reminding Banner and Ross, Roger used Flying Thunder God technique to leave. As for what Banner and Ross would do in the future, it had nothing to do with it. Moreover, with the Hulk around, they would not be in danger. Roger first teleported back to where the pickup car was and put Kusanagi's sword and the other stuff in it. Then, he teleported back to his office in New York. Just as he returned to his office, his phone rang again. "General Ross just reported a piece of information to us. The new green monster is not the Hulk, but Blonsky, who has been injected with Banner serum. He sent a request for help to S.H.I.E.L.D. The director has agreed to his request." Natasha didn't dwell on the fact that Roger had just hung up on her and gave a quick overview of the current situation. "And then? What does this have to do with me?" After hearing Roger's answer, Natasha was suddenly stunned for a moment. Then she remembered that Roger was a private detective who accepted the commission, not S.H.I.E.L.D.'s agent. "Can we request a commission? The price will not be lower than that of Banner." "Not interested." After saying that, Roger hung up the phone again. Although Abomination appeared, he was not interested in stopping Abomination at all. Even if S.H.I.E.L.D. could give up all their money, he was not interested in dealing with Abomination. "The trouble you caused yourself, take care of it yourself." After putting Kusanagi's sword, Gunbei Uchiwa and other equipment back into the scroll, he turned on the TV in the office and then switched it to the Time News channel. After transforming into the Abomination, Blonsky originally only intended to destroy the base's laboratory and then take Dr. Stern away. But because of a small mistake, the laboratory exploded, and Dr. Stern was killed on the spot. Regarding the tragic encounter with Dr. Stern, Blonsky felt slightly regretful for a second and then relied on his mighty strength to forcibly leave the base. If Blonsky left New York, General Ross would not be able to find him in a short time. I don't know if it's because of the influence of the serum or because of the absolute confidence brought about by the power surge, but Blonsky not only did not flee like Banner but instead took the initiative to show up and vent his newly acquired great power in downtown New York. Thus, the scene of General Ross' army fighting against Abomination happened. It was not a very wise decision for General Ross to fight Abomination in the densely populated New York City district. They could not use large-scale killing weapons in the city or mobilize a large-scale army. The soldiers under them could not stop Abomination, so General Ross quickly made a decision and sent a request for help to S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s request for help came to Roger. Because of his outstanding performance at Culver University, everyone regarded him as the best candidate for this mission. But they never thought that Roger would directly refuse. Looking at the news report, Roger leisurely drank the frozen drink and, at the same time, considered whether he should go to the VIP front row of the scene to watch Abomination. However, he finally gave up this plan and asked Erica to order takeout for himself. 20 minutes later, the door of the office was pushed open. But the one who walked in was not the takeout delivery man that Roger had imagined, but Natasha, who was wearing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s battle uniform. And in Natasha's hand, she was holding the takeout that the takeout delivery man should have sent. Blonsky now has power that is no weaker than the Hulk. If he continues like this, the entire New York will be destroyed. After saying that, Natasha put the takeout in front of Roger and continued, "I know you don't have a good relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D., but the ordinary citizen outside needs your help now. Enough, don't guilt-trip me with these so-called righteous actions. You are the ones who want to maintain world peace, but you are also the ones who create threats. If you didn't try to control the power that doesn't belong to you all the time, the monsters outside would not appear. Roger did not look at Natasha. Instead, he opened the delivery and took out the fried chicken and French fries. Are you really not going to make a move? Natasha's tone was no longer as challenging as before. Instead, there was a hint of pleading. It's not like you can't solve Blonsky. Although he has become green and bigger, he is still a flesh and blood creature. He could be tired out, injured, and bleed. You. At this point, Roger suddenly thought of something and put down the fried chicken drumstick and drinks in his hands. Living creatures, and they had their own consciousness. This fellow should meet the standards of a summoned beast. In order to confirm his he specially opened the system's introduction of the summoned beast blood contract and read it. From Natasha's point of view, Roger seemed to be seriously thinking about something. She could not see the system page floating in front of Roger. It's not that I can't accept your commission, but I have a condition. After subduing this guy, he will belong to me. Sure. As long as you can subdue Blonsky, you can deal with him however you want. Shield and the military will never ask anything about it. After hearing Roger's words, Natasha agreed without thinking. After getting Natasha's guarantee, Roger exchanged a commission scroll from the system. He used his last commission scroll when Dr. Ross was requesting the previous commission. The reward is $100 million. Write the rest yourself. Natasha was not surprised when she saw a scroll appear in Roger's hand out of thin air. She directly took the scroll and wrote the contents of the commission. Mission content: subdue Blonsky, abomination. Mission status: incomplete. Mission reward: 30 ninja coins. When Natasha finished writing the scroll, a new mission appeared on the system's commission page. Compared to the Hulk, the system's evaluation of abomination was much lower. The reward was less than half of the Hulk's commission. Abomination's reward was not that good. Of course, this could also be the system's judgment of his current strength. Although 30 ninja coins was not very abundant, it was enough for him to make this trip. And what he really wanted now was not ninja coins but a summoned beast that belonged to him. After spending 20 coins to learn summoning technique, Roger always felt that he had suffered a loss. However, Abomination's appearance made him see some hope to make up for his psychological loss. Abomination, the summoned beast. Abomination looked a little ugly, but since he had already been classified as the summoned beast, the attractiveness score was not very important. Chapter 81, Summoned Beast, Abomination. I accept this commission. You can inform S.H.I.E.L.D. to transfer the money now. After saying that, Roger directly used Flying Thunder God technique to leave office and went to the roof of a building near Abomination. Looking down from the roof, Abomination was like a wild beast, constantly destroying and attacking the streets. Although the soldiers around him were doing their best to attack Abomination, they did not bring any harm to Abomination. Instead, it made Abomination even more violent. Or it could be said that it makes Abomination even more excited. Looking at the civilians running around and the extremely nervous soldiers who could not retreat, Abomination could not help but laugh wildly. This kind of perfect body. This kind of powerful strength. This feeling of dominating everything. This is the future I really want. I am a god. Just as Abomination was fantasizing about the beautiful future, a liquid bullet struck his right face like lightning, leaving a visible scar on his face. Water release water gun technique. The one who launched the attack was none other than Roger, who had just jumped down from the roof of the building. At this time, although Roger was only wearing the 3 Megatama mask, Abomination recognized him at first glance. It was the guy who defeated the Hulk. After seeing that the attacker was Roger, Abomination did not casually attack like before. Instead, he analyzed Roger. This guy defeated the Hulk. If I beat him, it proves I am stronger than the Hulk. I will be the strongest. After a series of illogical thoughts, Abomination instinctively ran towards Roger. In other people's eyes, Abomination was like a giant dinosaur running towards Roger. And in Roger's eyes, Abomination was like a green pet dog running towards his master. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter. When Abomination came to a meter in front of him, Roger threw out the Flying Thunder God Kunao in his hand casually. Although Abomination knew that Roger could teleport, he had absolute confidence to punch Roger into a meat patty at this distance. However, things did not develop as he had imagined. In a flash, Roger disappeared when his right fist was only a few centimeters away from him. After noticing that Roger had disappeared, Abomination withdrew his fist and immediately turned around. The scene of Roger using Big Ball Ray's Nan to hit the Hulk left a deep impression on Abomination. He did not want to encounter the same fate as the Hulk in the past. Abomination was unlike the Hulk, who personally experienced the power of Big Ball Ray's Nan because Roger never used Big Ball Ray's Nan in the first place. Abomination turned around and saw the flying thunder god kunai that Roger had just thrown out. Before he realized what had happened, the scene in front of him instantly changed. Now, what was in front of him was no longer the chaotic street but a forest he had never seen before. Roger did not intend to deal with Abomination in New York City district, so he directly brought Abomination to one of the forests where he practiced wood release. He threw out Flying Thunder God Kunai, used Flying Thunder God technique second step, left Flying Thunder God's formula on Abomination, and then sent it here together. Before obtaining Sage Mode, Roger was not exceptionally skilled in the Flying Thunder God technique second step, so he rarely used Flying Thunder God technique second step in battle. But after having Sage Mode, he found that his grasp of the Flying Thunder God technique second step had a massive improvement. Now, as long as he wanted to, he could use Flying Thunder God technique second step at any time and anywhere, and he did not have to worry about the possibility of failure. After bringing Abomination to this unknown forest, Roger did not give him any time to respond. He directly used Wood Release Wood Dragon technique. A 10-meter-long hook-nosed dragon rose from the ground, instantly coiled around Abomination, and completely entangled him. Like the Hulk, Abomination belittles this wooden dragon at first, but he soon finds his thoughts are a little too naive. Don't waste your energy struggling. Unless I am willing to let you out, you will never be able to break free. After saying that, Roger let the wooden dragon bite Abomination. Although this would not cause any harm to Abomination, Roger still did it. No reason besides to provoke Abomination. His physical strength rapidly left his body, and the wooden dragon was getting tighter and tighter. Only now, Abomination finally understood why S.H.I.E.L.D. had entrusted Roger to capture the Hulk. From the result, Abomination's speculation was correct. However, in reality, the Hulk was even more miserable than he was now. After all, what the Hulk suffered was not Wood Dragon technique but Big Ball Ray's Nan. I won't have a long chit-chat with you. I have a contract scroll here. After signing it, you will be my summoned beast. When I need it, I will summon you to fight for me. In return, you will have a certain degree of freedom, and you will not be pursued by both S.H.I.E.L.D. and General Ross. Roger took out the blood contract scroll that the system had given him last time and opened the side that needed a blood signature. Go to hell, sign your head. Although Abomination didn't know what summoned beast meant, he knew well that he could not sign this blood contract. If he signed it, it would be a fate worse than death. Whether you are willing or not, you must sign it today. As soon as he finished speaking, Roger increased the output of his chakra, increasing the speed of the wooden dragon absorbing Abomination's physical strength. Not long after, Abomination, who was initially active as if he had been injected with stimulants, became incomparably weak and breathed heavily. After the wooden dragon let go of Abomination, the nearly 4-meter-tall Abomination fell uncontrollably forward, letting out a low sound of falling to the ground. I'll ask you again, do you want to sign it? Although the current Abomination couldn't stand up, he still clearly expressed his opinion. Although Roger could use the power of Sharingan to control Abomination to sign the contract directly, this was not a long-term plan, and he couldn't always pay attention to THF Abomination every day to check whether he was still under the effect of Sharingan. Therefore, he decided to solve all his problems right here and now. Wood Release, Wood Human Technique. A 5-meter-tall wooden sculpture rushed out from the ground and came in front of Abomination, giving him a beating. Time passed slowly. After being intensely exploited by wooden sculpture's iron fist, Abomination used his right finger to touch some of the green blood that flowed out of his body. He wrote his name on the blood contract scroll. When Abomination finished writing his name, Roger opened his attribute panel and looked at Summoned Beasts column. Summoned Beast, Frank the Punisher, reincarnated by Edo Tensei, Abomination Blonsky. Chapter 82, After 1 year. Looking at the information on the status panel, Roger nodded with satisfaction. Then, he said to Abomination, lying on the ground, from now on, you are my summoned beast. Under normal circumstances, I will not restrict your freedom, but you better control your temper and not cause trouble everywhere. Also, when I communicate with you, you better listen to the instruction obediently. Someone will come to find you later. He is also my subordinate. As for whether the two of you plan to live together or separately will be up to you. Let me remind you one last time. Don't try to escape. If I find out, I will let you have a good chat with the woodman and let it correct your wrong thoughts. After giving his instructions, Roger used Flying Thunder God technique to return to his office, then informed the Punisher to pick up Abomination in the forest. The matter on Abomination's side had temporarily come to an end. The commission would be completed as long as S.H.I.E.L.D. paid him. He now had a total of 73 available ninja coins. If he added the 30 more, his number of available ninja coins had once again recovered to the level of 3 digits. After having Sage Mode and the 2 additional would release and ninjutsu, his demand for ninjutsu decreased even further. Whether it was attack or control, he now had enough tricks in his bag, and there was no situation where his attack power was insufficient or his control skills were inadequate for the time being. After thinking about it, he opened the system's exchange page and looked at the basic ninjutsu on the first page of the exchange page. Transformation Technique. It was one of the 3 techniques taught by the ninja school. The basic of the basics, the basic jutsu that any must shinobi knows. A ninja who does not know the transformation technique is not even qualified to graduate from a ninja school. However, Roger had never exchanged that basic ninjutsu. He only exchanged for the body substitution technique, and he even studied it to an instinctive level. He definitely wouldn't exchange for the body substitution technique. He already had Shadow Clone, so exchanging for the body substitution technique was a waste of ninja coins. Compared to the body substitution technique, the body transformation technique was undoubtedly much more practical, and the improvement in the future might be even greater. When the body transformation technique was used to its limit, it could even make the chakra progenitor reveal a flaw in the fierce battle. Just as Roger was thinking about whether he should exchange for the transformation technique now, his phone on the table received a transfer message, a transfer of $100 million. When the phone received the transfer message, the commission in the system became completed, and the 30 ninja coins also received it simultaneously. The transformation technique needed 30 ninja coins, so he finally exchanged for this ninjutsu, which might be of great use in the future. By condensing chakra to change his appearance, the transformation technique made him transform into someone else. Conventional means could not see through this technique. Apart from becoming someone else, he could also become an animal or an item. Whether it was transforming into a human, an animal, or an item, it was just a change in appearance and would not change the personality or power. This also meant that even if he used the transformation technique to transform into the Hulk, he would not have the same physique and strength as the Hulk. The transformation technique is a divine blessing for secret agents or spies. But for Roger, who liked to face the front, the most critical use of the transformation technique was to confuse the enemy. After confirming the chakra circulation method of the transformation technique, he began his first transformation. Bang! When the white smoke dispersed, the person sitting on the chair became Natasha Romanoff. Just by looking at the appearance, there is no problem. But this technique is too weak, isn't it? The effect of the technique will be removed if you withstand even a little attack. It is enough to scare people. As for the rest, Roger stopped the messy thoughts in his mind and dispelled the effect of the transformation technique. Time flew by, and a year passed in the blink of an eye. This year, Roger took on some commissions from time to time, earning some ninja coins for himself. Most of the time, he spent the research and control of the Sharingan and would release, making these 2 bloodline limits become entirely part of him. After finishing this day of cultivation, Roger opened his attribute panel and looked at his current status. Host, Roger. Job, Ninja. Talent, Sealing Technique, 7 Attribute Chakra. Bloodline Limit, Sharingan, Would Release. Constitution, Sage Mode, Hashirama Senju. Ninjutsu, Body Substitution, Body Flickering Technique, Temporary Paralysis Technique, Shadow Clone, Flying Thunder God Technique, Second Step, Sensing Technique, Raise Nan, Self-Taught, Big Ball Raise Nan, Self-Taught, Psychic, Transformation. Wood Release, Wood Dragon Technique, Wood Human Technique. Lightning Release, Chidori, Chidori Sharp Spear, Chidori Current. Fire Release, Great Fire Annihilation. Water Release, Water Gun Technique. Genjutsu, Bringer of Darkness Technique. Genjutsu, Sharingan, False Memory. Physical Technique, Chakra Enhanced Strength. Chakra Volume, One Tail. Summoned Beast, Frank the Punisher, reincarnated by Edo Tensei, Abomination Blonsky. Number of available ninja coins, 256. There were no changes to ninjutsu, and he was still the same 1 year ago. As for ninja coins, he did not receive many commissions this year and only earned over 100. Roger originally planned to let the Punisher and Abomination do the commission by themselves, but he found that the system perfectly avoided the loopholes on this side. If he did not accept and carry out the commission himself, the system would never mark it as completed. Even if he accepted the commission and then arranged for the Punisher and Abomination to do it, the system would also remove the commission that had passed the judgment and deduct 5 of his ninja coins. After losing several ninja coins, he decisively gave up the idea of being lazy and went to carry out the commission himself. Among them, the one who changed the most was his chakra volume. According to his judgment, under the condition of having Sage Mode, he should be able to obtain more than 100 levels in a year of cultivation. But he found that he had underestimated this Sage Mode of Hashirama Senju. In the past year, his chakra volume had successfully increased from level 102 to level 300. Then, the system changed chakra volume's measurement unit to tail. As for the current chakra volume, whether the measurement of one tail is equal to one one-tailed beast, or one nine-tailed beast, or one 10-tailed beast, he doesn't know for sure. Chakra volume's growth also brought another benefit. His power now far surpassed his power a year ago. In other words, he was now even stronger. Chapter 83, Mjolnir. Although he now had 256 ninja coins, Roger did not have any ninjutsu or items that he wanted to exchange for. He even had 5 commission scrolls that he usually consumed the fastest, so he would not have any need to exchange for them in a short period of time. Just as he was thinking about expanding his business scope, he received a call from Frank the Punisher. Since turning Abomination into his own summoned beast, Roger had formed a team with the two of them and had them gather some strange metals outside. At the same time, he had them act as messengers of justice and protect the social security of the United States. To put it simply, it was to let them look for trouble with the local gangs from time to time. While maintaining justice, they would also provide income for office. Because of their hard work, office's business income had a significant improvement, and it even attracted IRS's attention. If not for S.H.I.E.L.D. silently suppressing this matter, Roger would have been invited by the Taxation Bureau to drink tea. Of course, in return, Roger finally came to an unofficial meeting with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s director, Nick Fury, who had the title of Motherfucker, and reached a consensus on some issues. "Sir, we found the hammer that fell from the sky. As you predicted, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s people found the hammer and built a simple research base around it. The hammer that the Punisher was talking about was Thor's hammer." Although Roger knew that Thor's hammer would appear in New Mexico, he did not know when Thor's hammer would fall. Therefore, half a year ago, he used the simplest and crudest method, which was to send the Punisher and Abomination to New Mexico, so that they could pay attention to the situation there at any time. There was indeed a reward for waiting. After hanging up the phone call from the Punisher, Roger began to sense Flying Thunder God's formula on the Punisher. Thor, we finally meet. I hope you can bring me some unexpected surprises." When the Punisher ended the call with Roger, a strong man with long golden hair suddenly broke into the research base. He quickly knocked down the guards in the base and quickly approached Thor's hammer in the middle of the research base. This guy is quite skilled. It is obvious that he has undergone professional combat training. It is impossible for the guards in the middle to stop him. The one who spoke was Abomination, who was nearly 4 meters tall. At this time, Abomination completely lost his fierce and arrogant attitude from before. After signing a spiritual contract with Roger, Abomination escaped several times in disbelief, but the result of his escape was not good. He even saw the border of Canada. That time, Abomination was taught by wooden sculpture and wooden dragon for a whole month, and then he completely gave up. This is S.H.I.E.L.D.'s matter. We don't have to do anything. We just have to make sure that the hammer is not taken away. The Punisher also found Thor, who was rampaging in the research base, but he did not take Thor seriously. Although Thor had displayed his exquisite combat skills, in the Punisher's eyes, he was only at the same level as S.H.I.E.L.D.'s elite agent. Without his divine power, there was nothing particularly noteworthy about Thor. Right now, not only did he not have the power of Thor, but he did not even have the superpower and physique that the Asgardians should have. Just as Thor invaded the research base, a few bolts of lightning suddenly flashed in the dark night sky, followed by heavy rain. "Someone go to the high ground and bring me your weapon." At this time, the person in charge of this research base was none other than Coulson's agent. Although Thor's invasion caught S.H.I.E.L.D. off guard. However, S.H.I.E.L.D. was a professional agent organization. The entire base instantly entered a state of alert, and more agents were chasing Thor. What's the situation? After giving the order, Carlson came to the command room and asked. The hammer sent out a huge amount of electromagnetic waves. The system can't record it, and the equipment can only be barely maintained. The interference from this thing is too big. After listening to the report, Carlson took out the walkie-talkie and said, Barton, speak. Sir, do you want me to stop him? Or do you want to send more people to hit him? Barton stood in a crane basket and said calmly. At the same time, he pulled out the composite bow in his hand. Wait for my order. Carlson did not give the order to attack. Instead, he quickly walked in Thor's direction. After knocking down all the shield agents that appeared on the road, Thor finally arrived at the center of the research base. He was only a few meters away from Thor's hammer. Looking at Thor's hammer, who had accompanied him for 1,000 years, a gratified smile appeared on Thor's face. As long as I can lift Thor's hammer again, I can regain Thor's strength. I am Asgardian's Thor. Just as Thor thought that he was about to end the test that Odin had given him, a strong black man over 2 meters tall suddenly appeared in front of him and gave him a heavy punch, knocking him to the ground. You are quite big. The knocked out Thor quickly stood up and said, but I have knocked down an even bigger one. As soon as he finished speaking, Thor's right fist fiercely struck the black man's face, and the two of them instantly engaged in a fight. While Thor and the black man were locked in battle, Roger also arrived in front of the Punisher. Sir, are we also going to join the battle? Seeing Roger appear, Abomination immediately asked. Although he had been taught by wooden sculpture and wooden dragon for a month, Abomination was still the Abomination who desired to fight. However, before the battle, he would ask for Roger's consent. No need. I will deal with the matters here. You can continue the entertainment activities from before. The entertainment activity that Roger was talking about was the work that the Punisher and Abomination had created for office. To them, this was a job that would make both of them feel happy. The Punisher and Abomination had no objections to Roger's arrangements and immediately left. Looking at Thor, who was tightly hugging and rolling in the mud, Roger silently used sensing technique to sense Thor's condition. This seal is ridiculously strong. There did not seem to be much of a problem on Thor's face, but in his body, there was an unimaginably powerful seal. This seal not only completely sealed the power of Thor in Thor's body, it even suppressed his Asgardian physique to an extremely low level. That feeling was like a heavyweight boxing king who was more than 2 meters tall was forcefully suppressed to the state of a newborn. Just when Roger was shocked by the seal in Thor's body, Thor used a beautiful flying kick to knock the black man to the ground, and then ruthlessly kicked the black man on the head. After doing all this, Thor, who was covered in dirt, came to Thor's hammer and Mjolnir, and grabbed the hammer handle of Thor's hammer with a smile on his face. Then, there was no more. Thor used both hands and used all the strength in his body, but Thor's hammer still remained motionless, without any signs of moving. After dozens of seconds of hard work, Thor looked at the night sky that was shining with lightning with a look of disbelief, and roared with incomparable grief and indignation towards the sky. Whether it was Carlson, Barton, or other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, they all silently watched Thor, who was kneeling on the ground. All right, the performance is over. Ground units, attack. Looking at Thor, who seemed to have lost his soul, Carlson raised his walkie-talkie and issued a new order. At this time, a shining silver-white flying thunder god Kunau flew toward Thor's hammer like lightning. When flying thunder god Kunau hit Thor's hammer, Roger instantly appeared and held flying thunder god Kunau in his hand. Is this Thor's hammer? Roger did not pay attention to Thor next to him, nor did he pay attention to the condescending Carlson, Barton, and others. He directly grabbed the handle of Thor's hammer, and then suddenly exerted force with his right hand. Kaka! Thor's hammer, who had not moved since falling, suddenly moved. Chapter 84, Chased by Lightning. Mjolnir did not move much, and the sound of its movement was very small. But even so, Mjolnir's movement still shocked everyone present. This hammer could actually be picked up. Carlson, Barton, and the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents all revealed expressions of disbelief. After discovering Mjolnir, they tried all kinds of methods to move Thor's hammer. However, no matter the method, Mjolnir showed no signs of moving, as if it was connected to the entire earth. Carlson, Barton, and the others only felt incredible, and as the former master of Mjolnir, Thor was even more shocked than everyone else. No one knew Mjolnir better than him. Because of this, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. In Thor's memory, other than himself and Odin, no one could lift Mjolnir. I was forsaken, and even Mjolnir was unwilling to recognize me. Why would Mjolnir prefer to be raised by a stranger than return to my hands? I really am. Roger did not know what was going on in Thor's mind. He was also in the same state of confusion. What kind of situation was this? Didn't Mjolnir have Odin's spell? Wasn't it said that only pure and righteous people could lift Mjolnir? Didn't they say that as long as they could lift Mjolnir, they would be able to possess Thor's strength? Was there a bug in the Odin spell? Before Roger could understand what was going on, the Mjolnir in his hand suddenly became incomparably heavy, and then with a bang, he directly fell to the ground. The moment Mjolnir fell to the ground, a bolt of blue lightning as thick as a bucket descended from the sky and struck directly at Roger. Boom! The lightning directly hit Mjolnir on the ground. The raging current produced a tornado of air currents, sending the people around him flying. When the lightning was about to hit him, Roger used Flying Thunder God technique to leave this place and return to the small hill outside the base. At this time, he was very glad that he had left Flying Thunder God Kunao here before he went to the research base. The speed of the lightning was far beyond his expectations. If he had not left Flying Thunder God Kunao behind in advance, he would have been the first person to be hit by lightning because he raised Mjolnir. Although Roger was far away from Thor's hammer, the lightning did not seem to intend to let him go. Initially filled with lightning and thunder, a lightning bolt suddenly enveloped the night sky, and the entire night sky became as white as day. Without giving Roger any time to think, the lightning in the sky seemed to have a mind of its own as it attacked him one after another. Boom 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 boom. He was inexplicably struck by so many lightning bolts, each one thicker than the last. Without the slightest hesitation, Roger instantly made a decision. Flying Thunder God technique. Because there was no other Flying Thunder God's formula around the research base, Roger had no way of repeatedly jumping around with these lightning bolts. The coordinates he used this time were the Punisher, who had already left this place. At this time, the Punisher and Abomination were heading to a nearby town, discussing which city they would go to next to carry out their work. When Roger reappeared, they were stunned for a moment. Then, they understood why Roger appeared. The next second after Roger appeared, a few lightning bolts suddenly fell from the night sky and hit the Punisher and Abomination. As for Roger himself, he returned to the small hill outside the research base through Flying Thunder God technique. Most of the lightning struck the small hill, making it look like several missiles had barraged it. As for the remaining lightning, it struck the Punisher and Abomination. One had an Edo Tensei body, and the other had thick skin, so Roger was not particularly worried about their situation. After confirming that there was no lightning in the night sky, he pulled out Flying Thunder God Kunao, which was stuck in the ground, and slowly walked towards the research base. If you don't own something, do not touch it carelessly, unless you want to be struck by lightning. Although Roger had not figured out what had happened just now, he decided not to touch Mjolnir if there was no significant reason. Moreover, in the short time when he mentioned Mjolnir, he felt as if a great existence was watching him. But he was not sure if this gaze came from the father of all gods, Odin, or from an existence he did not aware of. Anyway, no matter what, Mjolnir is now on the list of stuff he absolutely must not touch unless necessary. After arriving at the research base again, Roger enjoyed S.H.I.E.L.D.'s warm hospitality. More than 10 fully armed guards raised the weapons in their hands and aimed at his head. Don't do anything stupid. Just notify your supervisor, Coulson. Although these S.H.I.E.L.D. guards did not know Roger's true identity, after hearing the name of Coulson, they still silently reported the situation. Not long after, Coulson walked out of the base and came directly in front of Roger. What are you doing here? Coulson looked at Roger warily. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. and Roger were currently in a friendly term, he knew very well that this so-called cooperation could be suspended at any time. I heard that you found a very strange hammer, so I came to take a look. By the way, if you don't mind, I want to take the guy inside. Coulson and the others did not know Thor's true identity at all. They just regarded Thor as a foreign country spy. As for why this secret agent took the risk to snatch the hammer, they had not figured it out yet. At this time, Thor was suspended in an interrogation room. Covered in dirt, he was in a complicated state of loss and shock. He was disappointed because he found that he had lost the recognition of Mjolnir, lost the hope of becoming Thor again and returning to Asgardian. He was shocked because he found Tha Midgardian, a mere earthling, could move Mjolniring. This was something even the Asgardians could not do. If Roger had not been attacked by lightning that time, Thor thought that Mjolnir would found a new master. Just as Thor was confused, Loki, wearing a nice suit, suddenly appeared in front of him. Loki, why are you here? Seeing his brother suddenly appear in front of him, Thor's face appeared hopeful. I came here especially to see you. Loki said in a low tone. What happened? Did something happen to Jotunheim? Let me explain it to father. Thor said hurriedly. He had never been so eager to see his father. But Loki's following words immediately made him fall into the abyss of despair. Our father is dead. Chapter 85, Loki, the god of trickery. Father is dead? Odin, the father of all gods, is dead? Soon after, an irrepressible sadness and frustration welled up in his heart. What? Thor asked with an incomparably sad tone. Exiling you, coupled with the threat of war, makes him unable to bear it any longer. Don't blame yourself. I know you love him. I want to tell him, but he won't listen. Hearing Loki's words, Thor could not help but shed tears. It's cruel to put the Mjolnir by your side when you know you can no longer lift it. The burden of the throne now falls on my shoulders. Then can I go home? Thor asked in a tone that had never been used before. The terms of the truce are that you must be exiled. Yes, but we can figure out a way. Mother also forbids you to go back. Although they grew up in the same family, it had to be said that in terms of IQ, Loki overshadowed Thor. However, this was also Loki's talent. People with low IQ couldn't become a god of trickery. Farewell, brother. I am very sorry. No, I am sorry. Thank you for coming here. After fooling Thor completely, Loki left the interrogation room with satisfaction and came to Mjolnir. After a friendly exchange, Coulson finally agreed to let Roger take Thor away. Just as they were heading to the interrogation room, Roger saw Loki, who was trying to lift Mjolnir. That guy is trying to lift Mjolnir. Don't you care about him? At this time, Loki was in a state of magic stealth. The staff of shield around him did not notice his existence. Which guy? Coulson followed Roger's gaze, but he did not see anything. It's the guy in a suit with black hair. Although Roger had never seen Loki, he was 100% sure that the person who was trying to lift Mjolnir was Loki. Forget it. It's useless to tell you. After saying that, Roger went directly to the aisle near Mjolnir and said to Loki, who was below, You are Thor's younger brother, right? Please don't lift Mjolnir. After you lift it, you will be struck by lightning. Loki did not expect that someone could see through his stealth magic. What surprised him, even more, was that Roger knew his identity and Mjolnir. Who are you? Loki withdrew his hands and silently placed them inside his suit jacket, ready to pull out a small dagger at any time. My name is Roger, I am a ninja. Ninja? What kind of job was this? Loki thought that Roger was able to see through his stealth magic so easily because he was a mage like him. In the eyes of Coulson and the others, Roger looked like he was talking to air. However, as an experienced agent, Coulson immediately reacted and secretly arranged for SHIELD staff to scan the surrounding environment of Thor's hammer. After carefully analyzing Roger, Loki did not say a word and turned to leave. A strange guy who appeared out of nowhere, and he didn't look strong at all, a low-level existence that didn't need to be cared about at all. Roger did not stop Loki from leaving. He only used his Sharingan to silently observe the energy around his body that could not be detected by the naked eye and saw an energy that he had never seen before. Is this Asgardian's magic? Interesting. When Loki's figure completely disappeared, Roger turned to Coulson and said, That guy has already left. What follows is the usual release procedure. The only thing worth noting is that when leaving the research base, Thor silently took a notebook that was placed on the table. I didn't expect you to have this kind of talent. SHIELD staff did not notice Thor's sleight of hand, allowing him to easily take away the notebook that belonged to Dr. Jane Foster. Why can you lift Mjolnir? Also, why did you come to save me? I'll answer those questions later. What you need now is to change into clean clothes and fix your diet first. More than an hour later, in a restaurant at Antica Puente, Roger, Thor, and Dr. Jane Foster looked at each other and maintained a strange silence. Who are you? Thor was the first to break the silence. My name is Roger. I am a private detective. Roger did not say that he was a ninja because if he were a ninja, he would have to explain what a ninja was later. This would make the topic even more complicated. A private detective. Whether it was a ninja or a private detective, Thor did not understand either. You can understand it as someone who helps others to solve their problems and receives payment. Roger explained. I understand, just like a mercenary. Although there were no private detectives in Asgard, there were mercenaries, so Thor quickly understood what a private detective is. Strictly speaking, private detectives and mercenaries were two completely different jobs. But now, no one cared about these small details. Why can you lift Mjolnir? This is not something that Midgardian can do. This is a bit geographical discrimination. Although Asgard has a longer history, Midgard is also not a backward place. And whether or not you can lift Mjolnir has nothing to do with whether you are an Asgardian or not. As long as Odin's trial can recognize you, you can lift it. Sitting next to Thor, Dr. Foster looked at Thor and Roger with confusion. She knew every word that Thor said to Roger, but she could not understand the meaning of it at all. My father, Thor's expression suddenly became desolate. I saw your brother just now. He is quite handsome but a little cunning and not an honest person. Loki has always been like this. He has always liked to play pranks since he was young. When he mentioned Loki, a look of relief appeared on Thor's lonely face. Looking at Thor's current expression, Roger could not help but sigh. The same pair of parents raised them. Why was the IQ gap so big? He had intended to remind Thor that Odin was still alive. But now, he has given up on this idea. Your father is not dead yet. Don't underestimate your father too much. He is the father of all gods, a powerful existence with a great reputation in the entire universe. Chapter 86, Destroyer, Odin's masterpiece. My father is not dead. Thor's voice became excited. Of course. You got to have some confidence in your father. Father of all gods is not just a title. Without enough strength, the others in the universe will not recognize the title Father of all gods. Hearing this, Thor also calmed down a little and began to think seriously. After eliminating some subjective ideas, he felt more and more that Roger's words were correct. Mainly because Loki has too many bad records, so after calming down, Thor quickly noticed the loopholes. Then how can I go back? Thor asked the question he was most concerned about. I don't know. Thor initially thought that Roger knew how to let him return to Asgard, but Roger's answer instantly extinguished his fire of hope. I also want to go to Asgard. So if you find a way back, I hope you can bring me along. The reason why Roger talked so much to Thor was pure because he also wanted to go to Asgard and see the world outside the earth. The universe is so big. I want to go and see. He thinks to himself. In addition, he also wanted to go to Asgard to see the completely different civilization system from Earth, especially the part about fighting and magic. You want to go to Asgard? That's right. Looking at Roger's serious face, Thor thought about it. Bringing a Midgardian to Asgard, although this was not very consistent with Asgard's rules, was not a particularly serious matter. After seriously thinking for several minutes, Thor finally made a decision. If I can return to Asgard, I can take you with me. However, I have one condition, I want you to protect the people here from harm in the meantime. Although Thor was not as bright as Loki, he lived with Loki for over 1,000 years. Therefore, after understanding some things, he knew very well what Loki would do next. After losing his power, he finally began to understand the responsibility that Odin had often told him before. No problem. Not to mention just protecting the people here, even if Thor asked him to deal with Loki, he would also not refuse. After reaching an agreement with Thor, Roger left the restaurant and booked a room in the best hotel in the small town. He also paid the rent for a week at once. Roger originally planned to book a room for Thor, but after thinking of Jane Foster, he silently dispelled this idea. With Thor's appearance, even if he weren't familiar with this place and were penniless, he definitely wouldn't wander the streets. After all, this kind of strong man with a handsome face and long golden hair was still very popular in this country. For the next few days, Thor stayed with Dr. Jane Foster. He taught Dr. Jane Foster about the universe, and at the same time, he also tried hard to learn the knowledge of the earth. At night, Thor would usually stay at Dr. Jane Foster's side. During the day, he would appear by Roger's side. Although he had lost the strength he was so proud of, and Asgard's innate strong physique had been suppressed to the point of being an ordinary person, but Thor didn't let that sink him. It was exactly because he was in the weakest period of his life that he needed more strength. Although he didn't have the same strength as before, Thor quickly adapted to his current state, revealing the combat experience of a top warrior. That punch just now was pretty good, worthy of being the former Thor of Asgard. To make the battle even fairer, Roger did not use chakra, nor did he open his Sharingan. Your combat skills are also excellent. Not many in the Asgard Royal Guard have your kind of skills. While Roger and Thor were exchanging battle techniques, Thor's good friends, Sif and the warriors 3 of Asgard came to Earth with the help of Heimdall. If possible, Sif and the others would not want to travel to Earth in a way that would defy the king's orders. But there was no other way. It was Loki who was now sitting on the throne of Asgard. The huge energy of the rainbow bridge connecting the two worlds attracted not only S.H.I.E.L.D's attention but also Roger's attention. That thing just now should be the rainbow bridge. It looks like someone is looking for you. Roger pointed at the spiral-shaped cloud in the distance. That's right, it's the rainbow bridge that's doing the teleportation. Thor's eyes instantly became serious as he looked at the spiral-shaped cloud in the distance with a solemn expression. Thor originally thought Loki sent the people to hunt him. When he saw that Sif and the warriors 3 were sent over, the stern expression on his face instantly disappeared. Among Asgard, besides his parents and Loki, the people he trusted the most were warriors 3 and Sif. However, before he could talk to Xifu and the others, the rainbow bridge opened again and sent the real enemy over. When the second teleportation of the rainbow bridge had just ended, Roger used the sensing technique to sense the thing that was sent over. This energy level is almost like cheating, worthy of Odin's specially built destroyer. Prepare for battle. The destroyer is here. Roger silently reminded Thor. When the flying dust from the teleportation gradually dispersed, Coulson and the others who had rushed over finally saw the appearance of the destroyer. Is it a robot created by Stark? I don't know. That guy refused to tell me anything. Coulson took the loudspeaker from the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent next to him, came to the destroyer, shouted loudly, "Hello, your weapons and equipment are not registered. Please show your identification immediately." After hearing Coulson's words, the destroyer silently stopped and opened the armor on his face. Just as Coulson and the others thought the destroyer would reveal his identity according to their request, they saw the orange-red light shining on the destroyer's face. Then, there was a powerful beam with a high temperature. Boom! In just a few seconds, the destroyer smashed S.H.I.E.L.D's car in front of him into pieces and then walked straight toward the town. Lure the enemy out of the town. You should know better than me what kind of power the destroyer has. Fighting in the small town, even if we win, this town will probably be gone. After sensing the power of the high-temperature beam that the destroyer had just fired, Roger turned to Thor and said, "We are in charge of stopping the destroyers, and you are in charge of evacuating the town's residents." Thor did not refuse Roger's suggestion to meet the enemy outside the town, but he did not intend to let Roger participate in this battle. This was Asgardian's matter, and Asgardian should solve it. No, the weak are responsible for evacuating the residents. You are the weakest here, so you are responsible for that. Chapter 87, Attack on Destroyer. The weakest guy was responsible for evacuating the residents of the town? Thor had lived for 1,000 years, but this was the first time he had heard someone say this to him. I like this guy, ha ha ha. Volstagg, one of the warriors 3, patted Thor on the shoulder, then put the axe in his hand on his shoulder and walked out of the town with a laugh. Weakness is original sin, and you can now slowly get used to that. Although Fandral, one of the warriors 3, did not laugh as loudly as Volstagg, he turned to Thor and gave him a look that he understood. As for Hagun, he did not speak. He sighed silently and followed Volstagg, who left first with mace in his hand. Sif originally wanted to go with the warriors 3 to fight against the destroyer. Still, after seeing Thor's slightly helpless expression, she finally stayed and decided to evacuate the town's residents with Thor. After Roger finished speaking, he used body flickering technique to leave the town. He was unwilling to let go of the opportunity to fight against the destroyer. The destroyer was the ultimate weapon that Odin initially made to resist the invasion of the Celestials. However, after its creation, the most thing the destroyer did was guard Asgard's palace treasury. Although the destroyer had never officially fought with the Celestial, the ultimate weapon that Odin entrusted with such an important task, even if it did not have any eye-catching battle records, but also enough to make people fear fighting it. The primary material of the destroyer was Uru metal, and the source of energy was Odin's divine power. This also meant that the destroyer possessed an incomparably powerful defense and an almost unlimited amount of energy. Looking at the destroyer's body, which was over 6 meters tall and emitted a silvery white light, the first thought that came to Roger's mind was not that the destroyer was powerful but that the destroyer should be very valuable. Just as some inappropriate thoughts came to Roger's mind, the destroyer opened the armor on his face and then a powerful high-temperature beam of light. Boom! The high-temperature beam struck the ground where Roger had just stood, leaving a large crater more than 3 meters in diameter on the floor. As for Roger himself, when the high-temperature beam was about to hit him, he used body flickering technique to change his position. After dodging the high-temperature beam of the destroyer, Roger bit his right thumb and then directly hit the ground. Summoning technique. With his right palm as the center, a complicated seal formation appeared on the ground, followed by 2 balls of white smoke of different sizes. The Punisher and Abomination were summoned. The Punisher and Abomination were attacking a notorious gang and were about to defeat them. But at this critical moment, they were summoned by Roger. Ever since they became Roger's pet, this was the first time they had gained independence in battle. The Punisher didn't have many thoughts about being summoned by him, and his expression was as calm as ever. Compared to the calm Punisher, Abomination was extremely excited. He could finally enjoy the thrill of battle. He finally didn't have to bully those weak chickens. He could finally enjoy the battle to his heart's content. After listening to Roger's instructions, Abomination didn't say a word and ran towards the destroyer. At the same time, he let out waves of excited roars. When he saw that Abomination was about to pounce on the destroyer like a hungry wolf, a dull and heavy voice suddenly came from Abomination. Bang! Abomination was completely unaware of what had happened. He only felt an indescribable pain coming from his abdomen, and he was sent flying. In the face of the menacing Abomination, the destroyer did not do much, not even shoot high-temperature beams. The only thing the destroyer did was lift his right leg and kick Abomination after Abomination entered his attack range. What followed next was the scene of Abomination being kicked flying. After flying more than 100 meters, Abomination fell from the sky and slammed into the ground. Is the destroyer actually this powerful? Seeing that Abomination was kicked away so easily, Roger found that he seemed to have underestimated the destroyer. If the one who had just been kicked was him, Roger could not help but take a deep breath. However, he would not be kicked by the destroyer like Abomination. Only Abomination, whose mind was filled with barbaric fighting methods, would use such a reckless method to fight the destroyer. After looking at the Abomination, who was kicked away, Roger turned his attention back to the destroyer. In the face of the destroyer, a combat machine with few obvious shortcomings, face-to-face brute force confrontation is the most stupid tactic, and Abomination has proved this very well. Since that was the case, let's use speed to determine the victor. Roger instantly activated his Sharingan, then threw Flying Thunder God Kunao towards the destroyer. Although the destroyer saw Flying Thunder God Kunao, it did not take it seriously. In its judgment, Flying Thunder God Kunao was the kind of insignificant, weak attack that would not cause any injuries even if he was hit. Clang! Without any suspense, Flying Thunder God Kunao hit the destroyer's chest, making a crisp sound of metal colliding, and then bounced back. The moment Flying Thunder God Kunao was bounced back, Roger used Flying Thunder God technique to arrive in front of the destroyer, and his left hand grabbed the bounced Flying Thunder God Kunao. Big Ball Raise Nan! A 1-meter-wide Big Ball Raise Nan floated up to Roger's right hand and then ruthlessly hit the destroyer's chest. Although the destroyer had a certain level of self-awareness, Roger's attack was completely beyond its scope of understanding. The destroyer didn't even have time to fire a high-temperature beam before it was sent flying by Roger's Big Ball Raise Nan. Big Ball Raise Nan's twisting and tearing ability completely fell on the destroyer, sending the 6-meter-tall destroyer flying out in an irregular spiral shape. The destroyer's limbs and body were quickly distorted as if his entire body had been messed up and then randomly reassembled. However, the destroyer quickly stood up again. Under Roger's gaze, it restored its twisted limbs and body to their original appearance. It can do that too? The destroyer's characteristic structure makes it virtually immune to the Big Ball Raise Nan's damage. Other than making it fly a little awkwardly, Big Ball Raise Nan did not cause much damage to it. Big Ball Raise Nan didn't have the desired effect, and Roger did not care too much about this. He raised his hand to cast another ninjutsu. Would release Wood Dragon technique. The destroyer was not Abomination and the Hulk, so when he used Wood Dragon technique, he did not hold back. The nearly 20-meter-long hook-nosed wooden dragon sprang out from the ground, like a python caught its prey, and tightly wrapped around the 6-meter-tall destroyer. Chapter 88, Great Bodhisattva Namo Gatling. It was the same binding effect. When wooden dragon wrapped around the destroyer, it was more strenuous than when he wrapped around the Hulk and Abomination. This also caused Roger to have no choice but to increase the output of the Wood Dragon Technique's chakra. The Destroyer was more challenging to deal with than Abomination and the Hulk because there was no such thing as physical strength in the Destroyer root, so the Destroyer would not suffer the same effect as Abomination and the Hulk. The longer they were entangled, the less physical strength they had. Although Wooden Dragon could not absorb physical strength from the Destroyer, in addition to drinking the physical strength of the target, Wooden Dragon could also absorb the energy in the target's body. However, an unexpected scene occurs when Wooden Dragon begins to absorb the energy in the Destroyer's body. Wooden Dragon successfully absorbed the energy in the Destroyer's body, but as soon as the energy was absorbed, Wooden Dragon, who was nearly 20 meters long, was completely ignited. The long hook-nosed Wooden Dragon turned into a fire dragon in an instant. This sudden burst not only exceeded Roger's expectations but also made Warriors 3 look at each other. On the way here, the Warriors 3 first witnessed the scene of Abomination falling from the sky, and then they witnessed the scene of the Destroyer being sent flying by Roger. When they finally arrived at the battlefield between Roger and the Destroyer, they saw the scene of the Wooden Dragon, who was wrapped around the Destroyer, instantly turning into a fire dragon. Although the Warriors 3 had never fought with the Destroyer, they knew very well how strong this ultimate weapon made by Odin was. But at this time, they watched helplessly as Roger, an Earthling, bound the Destroyer. Although Wooden Dragon turned into a fire dragon, Wooden Dragon did not show any signs of being burned or withered. Wooden Dragon could still tightly wrap around the Destroyer because Roger was frantically releasing his chakra. After his chakra volume unit changed from level to a tail, he thought he would no longer need to worry about chakra volume for a long time. However, now, he found that his idea was a bit too naive. After continuing for about 10 seconds, Roger decisively gave up on maintaining Wood Dragon technique. Without the input of Roger's chakra, the burning Wooden Dragon soon showed signs of burning. The body of nearly 20 meters slowly eroded by the flames, breaking into pieces and turning into pieces of burning wood. Seeing this scene, the Warriors 3 could not help but sigh. If Wooden Dragon persisted for a while, maybe the Destroyer would stop moving because their energy is fully drained? Although the possibility was not high, it was not necessarily impossible. When Wooden Dragon broke into pieces of burning wood, Loki, who was sitting on the throne of the Asgardian palace, suddenly stood up. This Earthling was more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Loki, holding the Gungnir, looked at Roger carefully through the eye of the Destroyer. He quickly made a decision and went to the Rainbow Bridge. Without the entanglement of Wooden Dragon, the Destroyer also regained its ability to move. Just as the Destroyer was about to use the high-temperature beam to eliminate Roger, the hindrance, Roger in front of it silently formed a seal. To Roger, forming a seal was not necessary. However, in order to make the scene become more stylish, he decided to add such a segment temporarily. When Roger finished forming the seal, a giant wooden man over 25 meters tall crawled out from the ground like an ancient beast. Would release wood human technique. Looking at this giant wooden man, which was 4 times his height, the Destroyer's self-consciousness immediately judged that it was dangerous. Since absorbing the energy in the body of the Destroyer would cause Wooden Dragon to catch fire, there was no need to use Wooden Dragon to absorb energy. If Wood Dragon Technique's advantage was controlling the target and absorbing energy, then Wood Human Technique's advantage was that it looks extremely strong. Even if you had a body made of URU metal. Even if you had Odin's divine power as a source of energy. Today, I will defeat you. With a thought, wooden sculpture, like a god, raised its fists. Boom 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 boom. FCK strategy, FCK combat skills. Brute power is the true justice. Under Roger's control, wooden sculpture seemed to have transformed into the great Bodhisattva Namo Gatling. Its fists smashed so fast that it circled more than 3,600 rotations per second. Great mercy and great compassion to transcend the world, the physical beating of Buddha. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Even under the scorching sun, the Warriors 3 felt a chill coming from their heart's depths. Was this guy really a human? He must be an evil god that had come from a different world. How could such a person appear in Midgard? He should go around the universe and not stay in this weak world. At this time, Roger did not know what the 3 warriors of the Immortal Palace were thinking. There was only one thought in his mind, to blow the silver-white humanoid armor in front of him into pieces of scrap metal. The sound of missiles exploding constantly sounded, and the ground was constantly shaking. Coulson and others, who first met the Destroyer, also rushed over at this time. Then, like the warriors three, they looked at Roger, who was emitting a light blue light with shock. In order to maintain this tyrannical and unreasonable physical prowess of wooden sculpture, Roger had practically exerted his chakra to the limit. Time slowly passed. When the 25-meter-tall wooden sculpture finally stopped swinging his fists, a circular pit with a diameter of dozens of meters appeared in front of them. As for the destroyer, it was impossible to see its original appearance at this time. Even the orange-red light in the destroyer's body, which seemed never to be extinguished, had disappeared entirely. It was finally over. When wooden sculpture stopped, everyone present couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. After confirming that there was no energy on the destroyer's body, Roger ended wood human technique and gasped for breath. Such violent output of chakra allowed him to experience what it meant to be exhausted after being exerted. If not for maintaining his image, he wouldn't even want to stand right now. He just wanted to lie on the ground and rest. Just when everyone thought this matter had ended, Mjolnir, which was more than 10 kilometers away, suddenly soared into the sky and flew towards the small town at a speed that surpassed the speed of sound. Soon after, a mass of thunderclouds quickly gathered in the sky. A huge lightning bolt over 10 meters thick fiercely chopped down, creating a booming sound that resounded for dozens of kilometers. Chapter 89, Heimdall. After the giant lightning, an incomparably powerful aura instantly enveloped the entire town. Even Roger and the others, who were several kilometers away from the town, could sense this aura similar to the Celestials. Thor had returned. Feeling the powerful aura coming from the town, Roger revealed a trace of doubt. It was just evacuating the residents of the small town, but he could still retrieve Thor's power? Although he still did not know what had happened, he was sure Thor had successfully retrieved his power. It was even stronger than before he had lost Thor's power. Thor held Mjolnir tightly in his right hand, and the clothes on his body turned into Thor's armor. The red cloak fluttered in the wind, and blue lightning visible to the naked eye moved around his body like lightning snakes. Seeing Thor turned back into the Thunder God, Sif and Dr. Foster behind him couldn't help but smile happily. Sif was happy because the Thor she was familiar with had returned. The Thor who had led them to defeat all enemies in their path had returned. Dr. Foster was happy because she had witnessed the resurrection of Thor. From being struck through the chest to his current appearance as a mythical figure. After regaining the power of the Thunder God, Thor was not as excited as he had imagined. Instead, he calmly looked at Loki, who was not far away. I thought you just wanted to prove that you are stronger than me, but I found that I don't understand you at all. I can tolerate your usual pranks. I can also ignore your usual outrageous actions. But you should not joke about your father's life. You should not provoke the war between Asgard and Jotunheim to satisfy your desire for the throne. Loki, you really did something terrible this time. Thor never thought that his brother would appear behind him and pierce his chest with Gungnir while he was evacuating the town's residents. I am also the heir to the throne. I can let Asgard become the best of the 9 realms. I can let the entire universe know how powerful Asgard is. I will prove to Father that I am the most suitable person to become the king of Asgard. It is not me who is wrong. It is the world. Until now, Loki still did not feel that there was any problem with his actions. Become king of Asgard, exterminate the frost giants of Jotunheim, and then lead the armies of Asgard to conquer the 9 realms. Listening to Loki's words, Roger suddenly felt that his usual actions were not worth mentioning compared to Loki. After realizing that Thor once again possessed Thunder God's power, he dragged his exhausted body back to the small town and caught up with Loki in the middle of his speech. No, you will never become the king of Asgard. As soon as he finished speaking, Mjolnir, who was in Thor's hand, flew towards Loki like a flash of lightning. Then, he directly pierced through Loki's illusion. He has already left. The current him should be there. Roger pointed to the outside of the small town. When Thor looked in the direction of Roger's finger, he saw the unique teleportation light beam of the Rainbow Bridge. As Thor's younger brother, Loki knew Thor's character better than anyone else. Therefore, after Thor regained control of the Thunder God's power, he left the small town immediately. What Thor and the others saw was just an illusion he left behind. When he returned to the town, Roger had almost been deceived by Loki's illusion. If he hadn't used his Sharingan to observe, he would not have been able to see that this was an illusion. The one controlling the Rainbow Bridge should still be Heimdall. He can help us return to Asgard. Only Hofund in Heimdall's hand can open the Rainbow Bridge. Therefore, after seeing Loki leave through the Rainbow Bridge, Thor instinctively thought that the Rainbow Bridge was still under Heimdall's control. However, he ignored a small problem. The one who could open the Rainbow Bridge was Hofund, not Heimdall himself. As long as one had Hofund, anyone could open the Rainbow Bridge. I hope so. Roger was not as optimistic as Thor. If he guessed correctly, the one controlling Hofund and Rainbow Bridge was not Heimdall. As Roger guessed, the one guarding the Rainbow Bridge was not Heimdall but the Frost Giant. As for Heimdall, he was now firmly frozen in ice. After returning to Asgard through the Rainbow Bridge, Loki came to the two Frost Giants guarding the Rainbow Bridge. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two energy beams shot out from the tip of Gungnir, directly turning the two Frost Giants in front of Loki into atoms. This was not the first time he had killed the Frost Giants. Before leaving Asgard, he had used the same method to kill the king of the Frost Giants, Laufey. Laufey never thought he would die in the hands of his own son, Loki. The weapon that had killed him was Gungnir, the spear of his nemesis, Odin. If time could be rewinded, Laufey would not trust Loki so easily, even if he was his son. After dealing with the two ice giants guarding the Rainbow Bridge, Loki went to the control panel of the Rainbow Bridge and summoned the Frost Giants' artifact, the Casket of Ancient Winters. When the Casket of Ancient Winters, shining with a dark blue light, appeared in Loki's hands, his skin became more like that of the ice giant. Only the Frost Giant's descendant could use the Casket of Ancient Winters. Just as Loki was trying to aim the Rainbow Bridge at Jotunheim, he heard a crisp sound of ice breaking. Then, a tall figure appeared behind him and sent him flying with a punch. The person who sent Loki flying was none other than Heimdall. Heimdall became the Rainbow Bridge's guardian not only because he had the eye of Heimdall that could sense everything but also because of his great strength. The guardian of the Rainbow Bridge was the first line of defense for Asgard. If he had not been careless, Heimdall would not have been frozen by Loki's Casket of Ancient Winters, and he would not have lost control of Hofund. Heimdall had just sent Loki flying when he heard Thor's voice. Heimdall ignored Loki, who had been sent flying. He directed the Rainbow Bridge to Thor on Earth and activated the interplanetary teleportation. In the next second, the edge of the Rainbow Bridge shone with a rainbow-like light. In the rainbow light, figures appeared one after another. Thor, Sif, Warriors 3, and Roger. In the end, Thor still fulfilled his promise and brings Roger to Asgard. They saw Heimdall on the control panel, and they also saw Loki holding Gungnir. Chapter 90, Bifrost, Rainbow Bridge of Asgard. Seeing Thor, Roger, and the others appear one by one, Loki's mood instantly became as cold as the Casket of Ancient Winters. He might not even be a match for Thor alone. Moreover, there was also Roger, who could defeat the destroyer next to Thor. At this time, Loki began to regret why he went to Earth. Why would he want to stop Thor from evacuating the town's residents? It was one thing to stop Thor, but why did he want to kill him? If he didn't kill him, everything would never happen. Loki, surrender. Even now, Thor is unwilling to push Loki into a desperate situation. No matter what, Loki was his younger brother, who had accompanied him for thousands of years. Although this younger brother was not obedient and would even turn into a snake to scare him, but he could never be ruthless to him. Surrender? Why should I surrender? I am the evil god of Asgard and the future king of the 9 realms. As soon as he finished speaking, the Casket of Ancient Winters floated into Loki's left hand. In an instant, Loki's skin turned dark blue like an ice giant, and an icy aura that seemed so cold that it could freeze the soul surged out from his body. When Loki called out Casket of Ancient Winters, Thor did not hesitate and directly threw Mjolnir toward Loki. Mjolnir had just flown a short distance when it was hit by the ice energy that Casket of Ancient Winters shot out. In the blink of an eye, an ice pillar several meters in diameter appeared in front of Thor and the others. The ice pillar completely froze Mjolnir. After freezing Mjolnir, Loki did not stop attacking. Instead, he increased the energy output of the Casket of Ancient Winters. Although Loki did not like to solve the problem with force, at this time, he did not mind using this barbaric and violent method to deal with all the people in front of him. As a divine artifact of the Frost Giants, the Casket of Ancient Winters had the power to freeze the entire planet. Although Loki couldn't unleash all of Casket of Ancient Winters' power, it wouldn't be a problem for him to freeze a rainbow bridge. Relying on Casket of Ancient Winters, Loki regained the initiative and then picked up Odin's Gungnir. With Casket of Ancient Winters in his left hand and Gungnir in his right hand. With the amplification of these two divine artifacts, Loki instantly reached the peak of his strength. The Rainbow Bridge was not very wide. After being hit by the Casket of Ancient Winters, most areas had already been enveloped by huge chunks of ice. The casket of ancient winter's ice energy and the energy beams released by Gungnir continuously flew through the Rainbow Bridge, forcing Thor, Roger, and the others to leave the Rainbow Bridge temporarily. Loki originally did not expect to deal with Thor, Roger, and the others here. From beginning to end, he only had one goal: controlling the Rainbow Bridge and destroying Jotunheim. Although Loki was also a frost giant, he had no good feelings toward the barbarians in Jotunheim and would not treat them as his kind. After forcing Thor, Roger, and the others out of the Rainbow Bridge, Loki first used the casket of ancient winters to freeze the entrance to the Rainbow Bridge. Then, he came to the control panel of the Rainbow Bridge and aimed the muzzle of the Rainbow Bridge at Jotunheim. Interstellar teleportation is not the only function of the Rainbow Bridge. Strictly speaking, it was not even the main reason the Rainbow Bridge was designed. The Rainbow Bridge was an out-and-out war weapon. It was an ultimate war weapon with the power to destroy planets. When the power of the Rainbow Bridge reached its limit, the energy beam of the Rainbow Bridge could pierce through an entire planet. As for the interstellar teleportation function of the Rainbow Bridge, it was to send Asgard's army to the enemy planet quickly. Why was the exit of the Rainbow Bridge so similar to a cannon barrel? Because the Rainbow Bridge was originally built according to the specifications of the war weapon. I didn't expect your younger brother to be even more courageous than you. Exterminating a race just like that. How oppressive. Roger did not interfere in the battle between Thor and Loki. Even when Loki used the casket of ancient winters and Gungnir to attack him, he did not think of attacking Loki. When it is a family matter, an outsider should not interfere. In the end, this was something that the family should clear. Although the consequences of this family conflict were a bit serious, no matter what, this was a family matter between Thor and Loki. Loki was not like this before. Is inheriting the throne so important to him? Until now, Thor still could not understand why Loki was so eager for the throne, even willing to sacrifice his brother's life for it. After silently sighing, Thor began to summon Mjolnir, which was frozen on the Rainbow Bridge. Under Thor's forceful summoning, the frozen Mjolnir finally broke free from the ice pillar and returned to his hand. I can't let Loki stay on the wrong path. As soon as he finished speaking, Thor raised the Mjolnir in his hand and ruthlessly smashed the Rainbow Bridge. The energy of the Rainbow Bridge came from Asgard. The surface of the bridge was a passageway and an energy transmission tube. The Rainbow Bridge would lose its energy supply if it were destroyed. Naturally, it would be impossible to continue shooting energy torrents to destroy Jotunheim. Are you sure you want to do this? If you destroy the bridge, you won't be able to see Dr. Foster again. Roger silently reminded Thor. After hearing Roger's words, Thor's action of smashing the bridge paused for a second and then began again. Under Thor's all-out attack, cracks began to appear on the hard surface of the bridge. As Thor continued to attack, the cracks began to expand like a spider web. Just as Thor was recklessly attacking the surface of the Rainbow Bridge, a golden yellow energy beam flew out from the Rainbow Bridge and struck Thor like lightning, sending him flying. When Thor started to destroy the Rainbow Bridge, Loki noticed this. So he broke the ice wall at the entrance of the hall and walked out with the casket of ancient winters and Gungnir. Before Jotunheim was destroyed, he would not let anyone destroy the Rainbow Bridge. He wanted to prove to everyone that he was the most suitable person to inherit Asgard's throne. After being sent flying by Loki, Thor quickly got up and jumped high. Forgive me, Loki. Seeing Thor jump up and raise the Mjolnir in his hand, Loki instantly read Thor's thoughts. Thor's Mjolnir finally landed on the Rainbow Bridge. Boom! An indescribable energy explosion rang out, and an incomparably powerful energy storm instantly destroyed the surface of the Rainbow Bridge. The Rainbow Bridge was destroyed. The energy storm destroyed the Rainbow Bridge, causing the hall, which was already at the edge of Asgard, to fall directly into the boundless starry abyss. Chapter 91, Odin's Appearance. After discovering that this prodigal Thor intended to destroy the Rainbow Bridge, Roger silently used body flickering technique to retreat a distance. Thor and Loki had super physiques that surpassed humans. They could not worry about the shock waves produced by the energy explosions, but Roger could not resist that. Even if he had Sage Mode, he did not think his physique could compare to aliens like Asgardian. After the gorgeous explosion, it left a big mess. Just as Roger began to sense the traces of Thor and Loki, a powerful life form far beyond his imagination appeared in his sight. A superior life form as powerful as a planet. If Thor, who had recovered Thor's strength, had a small pond of energy, then the super life form in Roger's sight right now was a vast ocean that stretched as far as the eye could see. Compared to this ocean, Roger felt that he was, at most, a palm tree on the beach. After sensing this indescribable super life form, he decisively ended his perception and withdrew all the released chakra and spiritual force back into his body. In Asgard, only one person had this kind of planet-like powerful energy reaction. King of Asgard, the father of Thor and Loki, father of all gods, Odin. Odin, who was wearing armor, a red cloak, and a golden eye patch on his right eye, walked past Roger at a leisurely pace. After passing by Roger, father of all gods, Odin turned to look at Roger and then continued to walk forward. Odin's casual glance made Roger's heart involuntarily beat faster. That feeling was like meeting a natural enemy that could not be resisted, and his body surged with an instinctive fear. At this time, Roger finally understood why, when Odin was still alive, Thanos, who had the nickname of Mad Titan, did not dare to have any funny ideas about Asgard. From the surface, Odin was not tall and had a head full of white hair. It was easy to mistake him for an old man who could be knocked down with a heavy punch. But if someone really did this, they would know what it meant to be a weak person. As the old saying goes, the older the ginger, the spicier it will be. After quickly simulating the scene of his battle with Odin in his mind, Roger concluded that he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Even if he used all his methods, even if he directly risked his life, he would definitely not last a minute in Odin's hands. This was under the circumstance that Odin did not use Gungnir or Asgardian magic. After seeing Odin's arrival, the warriors three, Heimdall, and the others bowed slightly and took the initiative to make way. Although Thor and Loki, who were sent flying by the energy storm, were not seriously injured, the energy storm directly sent them flying to the edge of Asgard, blowing them into the endless starry sky abyss. This time, Odin arrived at the edge of the broken rainbow bridge. He grabbed the two brothers with one hand. It was as if he had casually caught two restless monkeys. Looking at Odin in front of him, Loki lost his previous madness and arrogance. He said in a childlike tone, "I can do it, father. I can do it." "No, Loki." Although Odin's tone was very calm, to Loki, it was like Gungnir, ruthlessly hitting his heart. He was completely denied. Loki revealed a bitter smile. He threw Gungnir on the rainbow bridge and silently took a few steps back. Then, he jumped. Loki's resolution not only exceeded Odin's expectations but also shocked Thor. Odin continued to attack, intending to capture Loki back. But he failed. Odin's left hand directly passed through Loki's figure. Illusion. What Odin caught was only the illusion left behind by Loki. When the illusion was shattered, Loki's figure floated in the depths of the starry sky and then completely disappeared into the collapsed space bridge. God of trickery, Loki, used the illusion to fool the father of all gods Odin and used his last stubbornness to protect his self-esteem. Loki used a suicidal method to put an end to the family dispute this time. More than 10 minutes later, in the conference hall of Asgard's palace, Thor, Roger, Sif, warriors three of Immortal Palace, and Heimdall stood in the hall without saying a word. On the throne above the hall, the father of all god, who held Gungnir in his hand, also did not say a word. He silently sized up Thor and the others standing below. After a long silence, father of all god finally spoke. Although Loki did something wrong, he also paid the price for it. This matter will end here. Thor will be held responsible for fixing the damage left behind by Loki. The Order of Nine Realms must not fall into chaos. Heimdall will handle the reconstruction of the Bifrost. As for Roger, before the reconstruction of Bifrost is completed, you can stay with Asgard. However, you must assist Thor in maintaining the Order of the Nine Realms. Roger had no objections to Odin's arrangement. Even if Odin threw him back to Earth now, it is business as usual. But it was very clear that after knowing what Roger had done, Odin was willing to satisfy the little wish of this Midgardian. After waking up from the state of Odin's repose, Odin learned everything through his pet crow. It was also because of this that he agreed to Thor's request and did not send Roger back to Earth immediately. When night fell, a small banquet was held in a banquet hall in the palace of Asgard. The theme of the banquet was very simple. It was to celebrate the return of Thor, the god of thunder. However, as the protagonist of the banquet, Thor did not stay in the banquet for too long. Instead, he came alone to the city wall outside the palace and stared at the distant starry sky. As the protagonist of the banquet, leaving alone in the middle of the banquet is not a good habit. Not long after Thor arrived, Roger's voice came from above him. Just like Thor, Roger secretly slipped out after staying in the banquet for a period of time. He could not stand the exaggerated flattery of the warriors three. At the same time, he could not stand Asgardian's terrifying alcohol tolerance. Thor raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice. Then, he saw Roger sitting at the edge of a stone pillar more than 10 meters tall. "Do you think Loki is a good person?" Thor suddenly asked. "In this world, it is not black or white. People are not good or bad. Therefore, I can't give you an accurate answer. But I think, although Loki is not a good person, he is definitely not a pure bad person. You are his brother. You should know better than me what kind of person he is." Chapter 92, Forging the Uchiha Madara's Armor. Odin asked Thor to maintain the order of the 9 realms, but in fact, the only thing that needed to be held was the order of Vanaheim. Asgard, as long as Odin was there, would never lose the order. The hometown of the frost giant, Jotunheim, was the most seriously damaged country in this family dispute. However, the king of the frost giants, Laufey, had just died at the hands of Loki, so even if these frost giants had some ideas they should not have, they lacked strength. It was possible that the fire giant, Surtur, would fall into madness again, but it was really only a small chance of that to happen. Surtur, who did not have the eternal fire, did not have the strength to threaten Asgard, so she could temporarily ignore it. Midgard, which was Earth, did not need Asgard to protect such a country with the support of the will of the universe. The hometown of the Dark Elves, Svartalfheim, was now in ruins, and it was impossible to mess around. Alfheim, the kingdom of elves, is the kingdom of elves of the Buddhist system. Rather than fighting, the elves who are at peace prefer to grow flowers and grass. They are people who don't bother to care about you as long as you don't provoke them. As for the rest, there are the people in the underworld, one was the home of the dwarves, and the other was the kingdom of the dead. They also did not need to care too much about it. Only Vanaheim, where the Vanir is located, will have excessive ambitions for the Rainbow Bridge to be destroyed. As the archenemy of the Aesir, the Vanir have the power to counter the Asgardian army. If Asgard hadn't successively produced 2 wise kings, Bauer and Odin, the Vanir would not have been suppressed by the Aesir for thousands of years. The destruction of Bifrost meant that Asgard would no longer be able to dispatch his army to hold the Vanir quickly. This was simply a super big gift from the goddess of luck for the Vanir, who had always been restless. On the 3rd day after Bifrost was destroyed, the Vanir began the operation to conquer Asgard's garrison. The war between the Aesir gods and the Vanir gods rekindled in Vanaheim. After receiving the emergency military intelligence of the Warner Ocean garrison, Asgard immediately entered a state of battle preparation and was ready to leave with the army at any time. "Is there a better blacksmith here who can craft enchanted armor? I want to forge a set of armor suitable for myself." According to Thor's instructions, Sif prepared a set of Asgard's armor for Roger. However, Roger did not really like this type of armor that had a cloak and was shining with golden light. The design of the armor had an undeniable style of Asgardian. It was gleaming with golden light, shining, shimmering and splendid. However, this did not fit Roger's taste. As a ninja, how could he wear this type of armor to go to the battlefield? This was simply an insult to his job as a ninja. The dwarves of Nidavellir are the best blacksmiths, but without Bifrost, we can't go there immediately. As for enchantment, that is an ability that only a few high-level blacksmiths have. As far as I know, only Dwarf King Eitri can do it. Father of the Gods and her queen also have the ability to enchantment, but you. Sif did not say the latter half of the sentence, but Roger was very clear about the meaning of the latter half of her sentence. A minor character like you should not have such unrealistic fantasies. Although the father of all gods, Odin, and Queen Frigga, had the ability to make enchanted equipment, not everyone could enjoy the treatment. Even Sif himself only had a magic sword enchanted by Odin. There is no need to rush the enchantment. I have some unique metals here. If possible, I hope to use these metals to forge a suit of armor suitable for me before we leave. As soon as he finished speaking, Roger used summoning technique in the room and summoned vibranium from the psychic scroll. The vibranium that came out from the psychic scroll was a part of the 10 tons that T'Chaka sent over last time. I didn't expect you actually have something like vibranium. With a casual glance, Sif recognized that these black ores emitting a faint blue light were vibranium. You know vibranium? Roger asked in surprise. Before that vibranium meteorite fell to Earth, Asgard already had a complete set of forging methods for vibranium. Moreover, in the past few hundred years, Asgard has gone to Wakanda to get vibranium. I was the one who led the team there a few times. What a heritage that time has settled down. Compared to Asgardian, who had an average lifespan of 5,000 years, the lifespan of the people on Earth was much shorter. Although vibranium is strong, vibranium is not the first choice of metal to forge equipment. Compared to vibranium, URU metal will be more suitable. For example, the gift of the goddess of Gaia in my hand is made from URU metal, and there is also the enchantment from Father of all gods on it. After saying that, Sif pulled out the long sword hanging at his waist and danced a beautiful sword dance in front of Roger. The silver-white sword body was gorgeous and, at the same time, guaranteed lethality. Even by visual estimation, Roger knew that this long sword was made by a master. I also know vibranium's energy conductivity is very poor, but I only have vibranium. Why don't you give me some URU metal? Since they had come to Asgard, it was reasonable to bring some of Asgard's specialties back. You. After hearing Roger's words, Sif suddenly intends to stab this guy to death with her sword. Asgard indeed had a lot of URU metal, but no one would beg for such precious metal. Even the royal guards of Asgard had not completely equipped with the equipment made from URU metal. Only a small number of elite warriors could obtain equipment made from URU metal. Sif calmed down and prepared to reject Roger's sudden request directly. However, just as she was about to speak, she suddenly remembered something. Roger was going to go to Vanaheim with Thor soon. If his equipment were better, Thor's pressure would be a little reduced. After seriously thinking for a few minutes, Sif replied, "It is impossible to send URU metal directly to you, but if you need it, I can ask the blacksmith to mix some URU metal to your armor when forging it." Since Roger wanted to forge armor, then she could just add some of URU metal into his armor. No problem. As soon as he finished speaking, Roger took out an armor blueprint that had been drawn long ago from the psychic scroll. "Are you sure you want to forge this type of armor?" After receiving the design sketch from Roger, Sif frowned and asked doubtfully. "Yes, it looks like this, and the color must be the darker dark red." The armor design sketch that Roger took out was not drawn by himself. The armor in the sketch is the same as that of Uchiha Madara. Chapter 93, Roger's Battlefield Rose, Vanquishing the Vanir. Under Roger's insistence, Sif took away the design sketches of the armor and the vibranium that he had. Because of the loss of Bifrost, it took Asgard 3 days to build the transmission magic array to Vanaheim and complete the final preparations for the expedition. Asgard's army had already been assembled. As long as Odin gave the order, this army that symbolized Asgard's strongest military strength would step on Vanarium's land and stick Asgard's flag into every inch of land. Half an hour before the army set off, Roger finally got his armor from Sif. Compared to Asgard's golden armor, which was filled with nobility and splendor, the armor in Roger's hands could be considered to be extremely simple. Moreover, with this extremely simple armor, one could not help but wonder how much defense this armor could have. Although Aesir had always suppressed Vanir, this did not mean that Vanir was a weakling. Seeing Roger easily wear this armor that any craftsman could forge, Sif could not help but begin to doubt Roger's strength. Only 2 types of people dared to wear this kind of armor on the battlefield. One was a rookie recruit who did not have much combat experience and did not know the difference of heaven and earth. The other was that he had absolute confidence in his own skills and was not worried that he would be injured. From Roger's age, Sif felt that he was more like the former. After putting on the same armor as Madara Uchiha's armor, Roger opened his Sharingan and summoned Kusanagi sword and Gunbei Uchiwa. Blood-red eyes, dark red armor, hanging on his waist was Kusanagi sword, and on his back was the unreasonably big Gunbei Uchiwa. He didn't know if it was his feeling, but when Roger put on the armor and weapons, Sif suddenly felt that the man in front of him seemed to have a kind of invincible aura. The journey to Vanaheim was nothing noteworthy and could even be considered a bit boring. Batches of troops entered the transmission array, and after the soldiers in front of them were teleported, they repeated the process. Compared to Bifrost's transmission, this kind of magic array transmission method was at least several generations behind, and it did not have the transmission rate of an alien army. Looking at Bifrost's momentum of sending the army over and then looking at the slow transmission of the magic array now, there was no comparison between the two. But no matter what, Asgard's army still went out smoothly. Asgard was an army with a fine tradition, so according to their custom, they first sent the commander of this army over and sent the army later. Roger silently despised this tradition of Asgard in his heart. It was called the commander taking the lead. The commander had to face a really high risk. If the enemy on the opposite side had prepared an ambush in advance, or the teleportation was rigged. Then when all of Asgard's troops were teleported over, they would see the commander in charge's corpse, which had long been cold. No wonder every king in Asgard's country was strong, because Asgard's tradition had long killed those who were not strong enough. Along with Thor were Roger and warriors 3 of the Asgard. As for Sif, she was not on the list for the expedition this time. The reason was straightforward. Queen Frigga personally withdrew her name from the list. When the colorful teleportation light in front of them disappeared, the first thing Roger and the others saw was the Asgard camp that was about to collapse. There were corpses everywhere in the camp, and the energy rays and arrows flew around the camp like headless flies. After seeing Thor, the Asgardian in charge of the camp immediately came up to him and reported the current situation to him. After listening to the officer's report, Thor did not give too specific instructions. He only gave a simple explanation, then waved Mjolnir and flew out. Warriors 3 was already used to Thor's actions. They immediately waved their weapon and rushed out. When Asgard's soldiers rushed towards Vanir's army like hungry wolves, Roger slowly walked out of the transmission array. It was finally about to begin. In the beginning, Roger's speed was only normal. In a few breaths, his speed began to increase. In the end, Asgard's soldiers only saw a red figure flash by. Roger did not pull out the sword of Kusanagi from his waist, nor did he touch Gunbei Uchiwa behind him. At this time, he planned to pay his respects to his idol. One person versus one army. Thor, who was in the air, was about to wave Mjolnir down from the sky when he saw a scene he had never seen before. Thor thought that his fighting style was already wild enough, but now he knew what was the chivalry of the battlefield. Roger appeared in front of one of Vanir's soldiers like a flash of red lightning, then with a flash of light, this Vanir soldier fell backward, blood spurting out from his neck. Roger did not use Kusanagi's sword, he only took the sword from the hand of this Vanir soldier and then used this sword to end the life of this Vanir soldier. After casually killing this soldier, Roger did not stop his footsteps. He turned sideways and directly arrived in front of the other 3 Vanir soldiers. Chi! 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 The 3 Vanir soldiers did not realize what had happened at all. The last scene that appeared in their eyes was a beautiful and deadly swing. Roger had already dealt with 4 enemies in the blink of an eye. After killing the 3 Vanir soldiers, Roger released his right hand that held the sword and grabbed the spear in the hand of one of the Vanir soldiers. Stab, stab, twist, point, poke. An unremarkable spear in Roger's hand seemed to have a life of its own, continuously attacking the surrounding Vanir soldiers. Roger was like a battlefield reaper, quickly harvesting the lives of Vanir's soldiers. It was not a wise decision to attract attention on the battlefield. But this was the effect he wanted. More and more Vanir soldiers rushed toward him. At this time, he threw out the long spear in his hand. After the long spear pierced through the 3 enemies at the front, it finally stopped. Roger ignored the long spear because he now had a new weapon. Vanir's soldiers rushed up one by one, trying to surround him completely, and cut down the man rampaging on the battlefield. However, no matter how many soldiers rushed up, Roger's pace was not affected at all. Now, he did not care about the weapon in his hand. He would use whatever weapon Vanir had in his hands. Knife, sword, axe, hammer, spear. No matter what weapon it was, as long as it was in his hands, it would be able to release an astonishing power. More and more enemies besieged him, and his Sharingan was also rotating faster and faster. The dynamic vision ability of the Sharingan was perfectly displayed at this moment. With just a simple glance, he could see through all the movements of these soldiers. As long as he casually waved his hand, he could take the lives of these soldiers. The battlefield rose that belonged to Roger bloomed. Chapter 94, Max Chakra Great Fire Annihilation. Roger's killing spree attracted Vanir's warriors' attention and shocked Asgard's warriors. When they knew that Roger was a Midgardian, these Asgard warriors couldn't help but have the idea of looking down on him. Midgardian, who didn't have a long lifespan, a weak physique, and wasn't very advanced in technology, wouldn't be a strong person no matter how they looked at it. If not for the fact that warriors 3 of the Asgard had always maintained respect for Roger, these Asgard warriors would have completely ignored him. Although Thor had exchanged blows with Roger before, after seeing the scene before him, he suddenly felt that he had not understood Roger's true strength. In the entire battlefield, other than warriors 3 of the Asgard, who had witnessed Roger beating up the destroyer, everyone else revealed a look of disbelief. Compared to the wooden sculpture, which was more than 20 meters tall. The one in front of him was only child's play. Asgard's warriors were happy now because they had found such a hidden expert on their side. Meanwhile, Vanir's warriors were in despair. They even felt they were not facing a human but a god of death disguised as a human. Roger's killing continued. Under his stimulation, Asgard's warriors also unleashed their strength, surpassing their usual power. Every one of them rushed towards Vanir's warriors with incomparable excitement. The battlefield began to boil. Blood splattered everywhere. Life and death were only on the line. At this moment, the battlefield was like the dividing line between the underworld and the world. His left foot was dead, and his right foot was still alive. As he watched Roger slaughter his soldiers like chopping vegetables and slicing melons, Vanir's commander took a deep breath and issued a cruel order. He covered the battlefield with all his firepower and used a dense barrage of artillery attacks to kill the dazzling Roger, a death god, completely. Although there were a large number of his soldiers around Roger, the death of these soldiers was utterly negligible compared to killing Roger. Because even if they did not do so, these soldiers would eventually die at the hands of Roger. Although Aesir and Vanir greatly advocated individual bravery, this did not mean that their war tools would remain in the era of cold weapons. Following the command of the commander, a team of cannon soldiers carrying energy cannons quickly arrived at the battlefield. Then, they aimed the cannon barrels with a diameter of more than 10 centimeters at the constantly dancing Roger. When this cannon soldier team had just finished arranging their formation, Roger had discovered their existence. Boom 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 boom. Energy shells fell from the sky like raindrops, instantly enveloping the area where Roger was. Explosions rang out continuously, and colorful energy storms attacked everyone around them, regardless of whether they were friends or foes. In an instant, before these artillery soldiers fired, Roger used body flickering technique to leave the battlefield, avoiding the rain of cannonballs. When the dust from the explosion dispersed, what appeared in front of everyone was a field of falling Vanir warriors like dried wheat. Since Vanir had used energy weapons, Roger naturally wouldn't be polite to them. Roger clasped his hands together and straightened his thumbs, forming a yin seal. Fire release great fire annihilation. A finger-sized flame shot out from Roger's mouth. Then, this flame suddenly grew and instantly expanded to a sea of flame. In just a blink of an eye, this flame wave arrived in front of Vanir's army and completely swallowed them like a hungry beast. This flame wave lasted only less than 10 seconds before completely dissipating. In that split second, the Asgardian, including Thor, saw hell. The Vanir warrior who Great Fire Annihilation attacked still maintained his last action before they died. They don't seem to be fleeing, or struggling in their pitch-black state. Everywhere the flames passed, it was scorched earth. The people attacked by the flames were all fleeing for their lives. Even Thor, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, couldn't help but suck in a cold breath after seeing this scene. The initially noisy battlefield suddenly fell into a strange silence. This was the first time that Roger used Great Fire Annihilation after his chakra volume had maxed out. From the current situation, chakra volume's improvement not only increased the range of Great Fire Annihilation's attack but also significantly increased the temperature of the flames. After clearing out Vanir's army formation in front of him with one move, Roger pulled out the sword of Kusanagi from his waist and pounced toward Vanir's army on the other side. The first battle of Asgard's army finally ended with Roger's brilliant display of skill. After the battle, Vanir lost 2,000 soldiers, including 200 of Vanir's trump-card Blood Edge warriors. When Roger wiped off Kusanagi's sword's blood and returned to Asgard's camp, all the Asgard warriors he met on the way back silently took a step back and bowed slightly to him. Who said that Earthlings could not fight? When Earthlings went crazy, they were even crazier than Asgard's most crazy four-clawed devil beast. It was just a simple camp defense battle, and Roger had established a higher position in the hearts of these Asgardians than warriors 3 of the Asgard. The fist size was the truth and the best way to gain respect. After arriving at the commander's meeting tent in the middle of the camp, Roger saw Thor, whose face was a little ugly, and warriors 3 of the Asgard, who did not say a word. As for the other 10 or so military commanders, he did not know any of them. Although Asgard's forward camp had been destroyed, this was the only camp that Asgard still had in Vanirheim. While Asgard was preparing for battle, Vanir practically used all of his strength to attack all of Asgard's camps. This also meant that the army in this camp was all of Asgard's troops in Vanirheim. We lost 22 camps, and now the entire Vanirheim is under Vanir's control. If we want to restore the original order here, we will need to reclaim the lost camp and send the Vanir back to their hometown. In other words, an army of more than 100,000 people is our biggest obstacle. Even if all 23 camps existed, Asgard only had 50,000 people in Vanarium's army. Before leaving, Thor had already prepared for the worst. However, he did not expect Vanarium's situation to be so bad. It is only 100,000 people. We have 4,000 people now. We only need to kill 25 enemies each. It is not too difficult. After listening to Thor, Roger gave his own suggestion. It was just killing 25 people. Wasn't this a straightforward matter? Chapter 95, Unwelcomed Existence. One person killing 25 people, yes, it was quite simple. Simple my ass. If Asgard's warriors had such strength, Vanarheim would have long become a vassal state of Asgard, and there would not be so many troubles. If not for the astonishing combat strength that Roger had just displayed, these commanders of Asgard would have definitely thrown him out of the meeting tent at the first moment. This is still very difficult. Let's take it one step at a time. We'll deal with the 3 closest camps first and then consider the matter at the back. Thor pulled the topic back, preventing Roger from continuing to make more crazy remarks. After studying the terrain of the 3 nearby camps in detail and comparing the military strength between each other, Thor quickly came up with a follow-up battle plan. Although what Thor usually did the most was to wave Mjolnir into the enemy's army and use his strength to break the enemy formation. But this did not mean that he only knew how to charge and break through the enemy lines and did not understand tactics and strategies at all. No matter what was said, he was a prince who the royal family had educated since childhood. He was not lacking in military command and strategic planning abilities that a king of a country should possess. It was just that before Odin exiled him, he advocated personal bravery. After listening to Thor's battle plan, Roger suddenly felt that this tactic of Thor's was quite similar to his grandson's military strategy. When Thor finished arranging the specific battle plan, more than 10 commanders left the meeting tent and began the specific mobilization of the army and pre-war preparations. When only Thor, warriors 3 of the Asgard, and Roger were left in the meeting tent, Thor said to Roger, "Your performance today on the battlefield is very dazzling and amazing. However, I hope you can control the degree of the killing a little. Sometimes, directly killing the enemy's commander is also good." If it was from the perspective of defeating the enemy, Thor would not only have any objection to Roger's actions but would even encourage him to do so. But the problem was that their expedition this time was to restore the original order of Vanarheim, not to exterminate Vanir. Therefore, he hoped that Roger could control his actions a little. It was enough to defeat the enemy army. There was no need to kill them all. It was not Asgard's style to kill them all. You are the commander, you have the final say. On the surface, Roger agreed with Thor, but he was thinking of something else in his heart. Odin was old and had become benevolent. If it were Odin in his youth, he would never have taught this concept to Thor. Asgard's army is the universe king. Asgard's reputation was built with the bones and blood of the enemy. Comparing the style of the goddess of death and Thor's request now, the two were completely different from the difference between a cold-blooded tyrant and a benevolent king. The Asgard army in the camp was divided into 3 teams, heading to their respective targets. It was unknown whether it was because Thor trusted Roger or because he had the idea of not seeing him, he did not arrange for Roger to be on the same team as him. At this time, the one with Roger was Warriors 3 of the Asgard's Hogun. As for the other Warriors 3, Volstagg and Fandral were leading another army. According to Thor's arrangements, the 3 armies would attack the 3 camps at the same time, cutting off the possibility that the 3 camps would support each other. Although Roger was one of the commanders in name, in fact, Hogun was the only one in charge of commanding this army. Thor originally planned to let Roger participate as the commander, but he refused. What kind of joke was this? He was someone who would even lose to the most straightforward human machine when playing a strategic game. Letting him command the army was equivalent to allowing the army go for free. After a long journey, Roger and the others finally arrived at the forest near the target camp. There aren't many guards in the camp. There are only less than 2,000 people. More than half of them are recruited mercenaries, so their actual combat strength is a little weaker. Hogun explained to Roger. To him, this Midgardian, his understanding of Vanir was basically equivalent to nothing. Those people wearing different clothes are mercenaries. Their sources are very complicated. Some are interstellar pirates, and some are important criminals who are wanted by their respective planets. Therefore, when facing them, it doesn't matter if they are cruel. These interstellar pirates and wanted criminals belong to the unwelcomed existence, no matter which planet they are on. To put it simply, even if he used the cruelest method to kill these fellows, there would not be any harmful repercussions. Understood. Seeing that Roger was ready to fight at any time, Hogan also issued the order to the army behind him to prepare to attack. However, at this time, a rock puppet over 5 meters tall stood up from the camp and walked straight to the gate of the camp. Behind this rock puppet, there were more than 20 smaller rock puppets. How could there be a Cronin warrior here? Hogan's face turned extremely ugly. The Cronin warriors? Leave these rock people to me. You take people to deal with other targets. As soon as he finished speaking, Roger used body flickering technique to leave the forest and directly arrive in front of the 5-meter-tall Cronin warrior. With a body entirely made of rock and the giant hammer in his hand that was even bigger than Roger's body, this Cronin warrior was simply a human-shaped walking siege weapon. The sudden appearance of Roger stunned this Cronin warrior for a moment, and then he shouted at Roger loudly. Unfortunately, Roger, who had never learned the alien language, could not understand what this Cronin warrior was saying. However, Roger's figure again disappeared when he saw that this Cronin warrior had used his hand to do something that was not very civilized. Big ball raise Nan. He saw Roger suddenly appear in front of this Cronin warrior and then directly slapped the 1-meter diameter big ball raise Nan in his right hand on his face. Boom! Amidst the violent explosion, pieces of broken rock scattered around like raindrops. Under the terrifying impact of big ball raise Nan and the twisting force, the 5-meter-tall Cronin warrior couldn't help but take a few steps back and then fell backward uncontrollably. When this Cronin warrior fell, people discovered that the rock head of this Cronin warrior had completely disappeared. One-hit kill. The Cronin warrior, who was known as a meat grinder on the battlefield, fell just like that, unable to resist at all. Chapter 96, Nemesis of the Aesir. Cronin, famous for their defense, had been one-shot. Moreover, the one who had been one-shot was a Cronin warrior over 5 meters tall and was very likely to grow into a lord. What was wrong with this world? Even the experienced and knowledgeable Asgard and Vanir warriors could not help but wonder if they hallucinated after seeing this. Among them, the most shocked were the Cronin warriors behind the giant Cronin. For Cronin warriors, there was a simple and crude standard to measure strength. The larger the body, the stronger the person. However, their boss, who was more than twice their height, fell in front of them just like that. For these Cronin warriors, this was no different from a thunderbolt out of a clear sky. Compared to the surrounding crowd, who were shocked and even suspected that their eyes were hallucinating, Roger himself was extremely calm. Not to mention a stone man, even if a steel giant was hit by his big ball raise Nan, even if it did not die, it would definitely lose half of its life. Moreover, after that Cronin warrior made that taunting posture, he also silently increased the output of his chakra. In broad daylight, he made such a vulgar move in front of everyone. This was simply the regression of civilization, the collapse of etiquette, and the degeneration of wisdom. Therefore, Roger felt that he needed to correct the civilized behavior of this Cronin warrior. After dealing with this Cronin warrior, Roger looked at the more than 20 little Cronin warriors behind him. Although they were called little Cronin warriors, they were still comparable to the fallen Cronin warriors. These little Cronin warriors were still in a state of shock. Each of them was more than 2 meters tall, and their arms were thicker than Roger's thighs. Squeak! Just as these Cronin warriors were still shocked by the death of their boss, they heard the sound of 1,000 birds chirping simultaneously. Following the voice, they saw Roger holding Kusanagi sword and the light blue electric current visible to the naked eye. Kusanagi sword Chidori katana. Roger did not give these Cronin warriors too much time to react. When these Cronin warriors looked at him, his figure suddenly disappeared. Then, there was the sound of stones breaking one by one. These cracking sounds were very crisp, concise, and also very cruel. In front of Chidori katana, which could even easily cut steel, the defensive power that these Cronin warriors were proud of was like paper. As Kusanagi sword continued to cut through, a light and slippery scratch appeared on their rock bodies. Then, under the influence of gravity, their rock bodies were divided into 2 halves with the scratch as the boundary and then heavily fell to the ground. There was no blood splashing everywhere, nor were there any internal organs. After being cut in half by Kusanagi sword, these Cronin warriors who had lost their lives turned into pieces of gravel in a few seconds. Compared to these little Cronin warriors who had turned into gravel, the big guy who fell first still maintained his form. Roger did not know whether this was a manifestation of strength or what had happened to the big guy who fell first. He only glanced at the body of the big guy a little and then turned his attention back to the remaining little Cronin warriors. After beheading the last Cronin warrior, Roger stopped and put the Kusanagi sword back into the sword sheath. From the moment he first appeared to the time when he put away his sword and put it back in the sheath, less than a minute had passed. When Roger began to turn around and leave, Hogan and the Asgard warriors finally reacted, shouting and rushing out from the hidden forest. Next was an ordinary camp battle that could no longer be considered ordinary. After dealing with those Cronin warriors, Roger did not participate in the next battle. Instead, he came under a big tree surrounded by 3 people and casually sat down. Although the number of Asgard's warriors was not as many as the enemies in the camp, whether it was equipment or individual strength, Asgard's warriors could steadily gain the upper hand. Other than the Cronin warriors, the other enemies in the camp had no way of arousing his interest. Although the mercenaries all looked very different, and the color of the blood they spat out was also very interesting, that was all. Looking at the one-sided battle in the camp, Roger became curious. Was Vanir really qualified to become the nemesis of Aesir? Whether it was in terms of equipment or personal strength, Vanir's warriors were one level lower than Aesir. Even the trump card, Blood Blade Warrior of Vanir, was about the same level as the elite warriors of Asgard's side. But one was a trump card, and the other was just an elite. But soon, Roger knew why Vanir could become the nemesis of Aesir. Just as he was about to fall asleep, he felt a strong energy fluctuation descend into the camp. When he opened his eyes to look, he saw a colossal tornado nearly 10 meters in diameter. This sudden tornado, regardless of whether it was the enemy or the enemy, caused the entire camp to be in ruins. When the tornado disappeared, Roger saw 3 men wearing light blue armor and a green cape. Sensing technique. Without any hesitation, Roger decisively used sensing technique and began to sense the 3 enemies that looked very unusual. This kind of energy strength is very good. Roger, initially bored, suddenly became highly spirited, showing an eager posture. Compared to those ordinary Vanir warriors, these 3 enemies who suddenly appeared not only stronger but also Roger felt the aura of a storm on them. Roger had also sensed this kind of aura from Thor before. The difference was that Thor had the aura of lightning, and what he felt now was the aura of a storm. After the tornado ended, the 3 enemies who suddenly appeared raised their spears at the same time. The originally clear sky was suddenly shrouded in dark clouds, and the torrential rain poured down. Along with the torrential rain, a hurricane big enough to send Asgard's warriors flying was coming. If these 3 people did not appear, it would not take long for Asgard's warriors to completely take down this camp. However, now, Asgard's warriors were constantly sent flying by the hurricane. The excellent situation that had been created before was instantly cleared. Water Release Water Gun Technique. Chapter 97, 3 Storm Brothers. In the storm, the liquid bullet that water gun technique shot out was nearly invisible. It did not attract the attention of others at all. However, in the next second, the enemy in the middle was sent flying, and the light blue spear in his hand was thrown to the side. The moment the enemy was sent flying, the storm hurricane that was like a natural disaster instantly disappeared as if everything just now was just an illusion. Looking at the enemy that was sent flying, Roger frowned slightly. He initially thought that this liquid bullet could directly take away the enemy and complete a surprise attack. But the final result was that the liquid bullet that water gun technique shot out hit the enemy and left a fist-sized dent on the armor on his chest. Water gun technique, famous for its penetrating power, was blocked just like that. After the wind and rain stopped, Hagun led Asgard warriors out of the camp and quickly came to Roger's side. These are the 3 brothers of Vanir. They are Freyr, Fode, and Freya from left to right. They are descendants of Njord and have the power of the storm. Moreover, the 3 of them are extremely good at fighting together. They are famous experts among Vanir. Hogan introduced the 3 storm brothers. Then what's the situation now? When Hogan brought Asgard's warriors out of the camp, the 3 storm brothers also reorganized their troops. However, they did not let Vanir's warriors launch an attack. Instead, they let the troops stay in front of the camp's gate. King versus king, generals versus generals. It seems that they intend to use the battle formation to decide the outcome of this battle. Although Roger had never experienced the so-called general battle formation, he immediately understood the meaning of the battle generals when he saw the 3 storm brothers take the initiative to walk in front of the battle formation. The result of the battle between the 2 generals decided the outcome of the entire battle. This kind of general battle method was not rare on Earth. From the development of the Earth's civilization, This general battle method might have been passed on from Asgard's side to Earth. 1 against 3? Go, I will support you mentally. After saying that, Roger silently took a few steps back and gestured to Hogun. Since it was a general battle, it must be the commander of both sides. Hogun was the current commander of Asgard's army. When Hogun saw Roger's expression of "I think highly of you," he almost couldn't help but smash the spiked hammer in his hand directly at Roger. What kind of joke was this? The other side was the three Storm brothers. Not to mention him alone, even if Warriors 3 of the Asgard was there, he might not be able to win against the other side. Although this method of battle generals looked more civilized, it could avoid the death of ordinary warriors. But the problem was that the commander would die if the general battle was lost. Glancing at Roger and then looking at the three Storm brothers not far away, Hogun quickly made a decision. Under everyone's gaze, Hogun raised the spiked hammer in his hand and pointed at the three Storm brothers opposite him. Then, he turned around and ran. Who said that a warrior who used a spiked hammer was not good at speed? Hogun used his actions to prove that even if he held a spiked hammer, he could still run very fast. Hogun's actions, without any suspense, caused a wave of booing. Even the Asgard warriors of their side could not help but sigh when they saw this scene. Hogun did not take the booing of Vanir warriors to heart at all. Compared to the value of life, a little booing was nothing. Roger also did not expect Hogun to do such a thing, making him doubt Asgard's martial spirit. Since Hogun was not in the mood to fight a general, then he could only let Roger do it himself. Moreover, he just happened to have a slight interest in the so-called storm power. Although the nature of the energy was different from how it was displayed, from his point of view, the power of the storm was somewhat similar to that of wind release and water release. The only difference was that usually, after the wind attribute of the chakra fused with the water attribute, it would turn into ice. Roger casually walked to a place about 20 meters away from the three brothers and then pulled out the sword of Kusanagi from his waist. At the same time he pulled out Kusanagi's sword, the three brothers also raised the spear in their hands and pointed the tip of the spear shining with cold light at him. After that, Roger disappeared in front of the three brothers. He was in the middle of a battle right now, so it was unnecessary for him to announce his name. The next second after Roger disappeared, Fred, who water gun technique had just hit, did not hesitate and directly thrust his spear toward the empty space in front of him. It had to be said that Fred's reaction was fast, and his combat intuition was also sharp enough. However, Roger was even faster. Body flickering technique. The moment Fred thrust out his spear, Roger changed the direction of his sprint and directly arrived in front of the leftmost, Freyr. Kusanagi sword Chidori katana. Just as the bird's cry rang out, sword of Kusanagi, which was wrapped in a light blue electric snake, arrived in front of Flint. Just as Kusanagi's sword was about to cut across Freyr's neck, a more than 1 meter thick tornado came from Roger's right side. Whoosh! Kusanagi's sword ultimately failed to cut past Freyr's neck, and Roger also appeared under the tornado attack. The one who called out the tornado was not Fred, who was standing in the middle, but Freya, who was on the right. It was only now that Roger finally understood the true meaning of Hogun's words about how the three brothers were extremely good at working together. From the time he attacked to when he was forced out, only less than 2 seconds had passed. However, in this short period of 2 seconds, the three brothers showed a tacit understanding of each other and directly interrupted Roger's attack. When he was forced out, Fred and Freyr did not hesitate at all. They immediately rushed forward to entangle him. Clang 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 clang. The sound of metal colliding continuously rang out. The sword of Kusanagi and the three Storm brothers' spears constantly collided. Roger initially thought that the three Storm brothers were more skilled in magic attacks, but judging from the current situation, they were more skilled in close combat. The attacks of the three brothers were incomparably fierce, and three spears continuously stabbed Roger from different directions. Whether it was the strength and speed of the attacks or the angle and timing of the attacks, all of them could be considered impeccable. Even if it were Thor, in the face of this joint attack of the three brothers, he would only helplessly choose to retreat. However, Roger was not Thor. Moreover, he also had the Sharingan. Relying on the dynamic vision of the Sharingan, Roger blocked every attack of the three brothers. Don't look down on people too much. 1 against 3, Roger not only did not choose to retreat but also took the time to counterattack. As if sensing that Roger was difficult to deal with, the three brothers suddenly accelerated the rhythm of their attack. The three stepped forward simultaneously, further compressing Roger's activity area. Are you finally willing to come in? Although the actions of the three brothers made Roger's activity area smaller, it also gave him a great opportunity to counterattack. Lightning release Chidori current. Chapter 98, Fighting with Life on the Line. What should you do when the three malicious adult men approach you with sticks? The answer was very simple: electrocute them. A visible electric current instantly covered Roger's entire body. Without needing to be controlled, this electric current was like a poisonous snake preying on its prey, suddenly pouncing toward the three Storm brothers. Boom! In just the blink of an eye, the three Storm brothers were sent flying and then heavily slammed into the ground. Do not get close to the man who can release electricity, especially if the man is holding a sword. After using Chidori current to send the three Storm brothers flying, Roger did not hesitate at all and directly attacked the nearest one, Fred. The sword of Kusanagi, wrapped in electricity, arrived in front of Fred and was blocked by the spear in Fred's hand. Even in a situation where his movements were inconvenient, Fred still made a defensive posture at the last moment, using the spear in his hand to block sword of Kusanagi, which was about to cut his neck. Relying on the combat instinct honed from many years of fighting, Fred bought himself a precious chance to survive. As for the rest, he just had to give it to Freyr and Freya. Just as Fred predicted, after discovering that he was attacked, Freyr and Freya raised the spear in their hands one after another, and two dragons rushed out from the spear tip, directly attacking Roger's back. Freyr and Freya's attacks were just right, just in time for Roger to make his second move. If he continued to attack Fred, then he would also be hit by the tornado behind him. Do you want to kill him or leave? The answer was, leave. The two dragons swept past Roger like lightning and disappeared into the air. After body flickering technique left, Roger did not continue to attack the three Storm brothers. Instead, he allowed the three of them to gather together. You are very strong. But you are no match for the three of us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being alone. Freyr, who was standing in the middle, said to Roger. At the same time, he raised the spear in his hand and prepared to attack at any time. To remain unharmed under the combined attack of the three brothers and even launch two extremely threatening attacks, this kind of opponent was worthy of them going all out. Is there a lack of bullying when there are more people? Since that's the case, I'll let you all experience it if there are more of me. As soon as he finished speaking, Roger displayed Shadow Clone's technique. Bang! 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 After 8 balls of white smoke, 8 identical shadow clones appeared beside the original body. What kind of spell was this? Looking at the 8 shadow clones beside Roger, the 3 Storm brothers could not help but be stunned for a moment. This was not an illusion, this was a physical clone. After discovering that shadow clone beside Roger was not an illusion, the 3 Storm brothers silently clenched the spear in their hand. One Roger was already difficult enough to deal with, but now there were 8 more. Could this world still be fine? Hogan had a strange expression on his face compared to the vigilant 3 Storm brothers. Ever since he saw Roger use Wood Human technique and Wood Dragon technique, his evaluation of Roger had increased explosively. Even if Roger had turned into Sif, he would not be surprised. When Shadow Clone appeared, Asgard's warrior was silent for a few seconds before bursting into enthusiastic cheers. The second round has begun. As soon as Roger finished speaking, he and the 8 shadow clones disappeared from sight. The next second, they came to the 3 Storm brothers' surroundings. 9 electric snakes wrapped around the sword of Kusanagi stabbed at the 3 Storm brothers simultaneously. Although the sword of Kusanagi in Shadow Clone's hands could not compare to the real sword of Kusanagi, they would still die if they were stabbed. The 3 Storm brothers did not dare to be careless at all. The 3 stood back to back and brandished the spears in their hands tightly. After the exchange just now, Roger also had some information about the 3 Storm brothers. The 3 Storm brothers could summon hurricanes and torrential rain, but they could not do this in close combat. This also meant that the 3 Storm brothers could only choose between long range and close combat. As long as the attack was fast enough, the 3 Storm brothers would not have the opportunity to release the power of the storm. And speed was precisely what Roger was best at. The scene of the 3 Storm brothers and the other 2 attacking Roger turned into the scene of 9 Roger attacking the 3 Storm brothers. The speed of Roger and Shadow Clone's attacks became faster and faster. It did not take long for them to exceed the limit that the naked eye could capture. This was not good news for the onlookers, Hogan and the others. Because they could only see the 3 Storm brothers constantly waving his spear, and Roger's figure could not be seen at all. Clang 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 clang. The sound of Kusanagi's sword and the spear continued to ring, and the pressure three Storm Brothers faced was getting stronger and stronger. Just as they were about to take Roger's attack head-on and use slight injuries as the price to release the power of the storm forcibly, Roger's voice suddenly sounded in their ears. The first. The hairs on the three Storm Brothers' bodies stood up, and a dangerous thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Soon after, Freyr and Fred saw a beautiful bloodline fly past their eyes. It was Freya. Although the three Storm Brothers' strength was about the same, after the fight, Roger found that Freya's strength was slightly weaker than Fred's and Freyr's. Usually, this small gap would not have any effect. However, in the super high-speed attack and defense that Roger had specially created, this small gap in strength was infinitely magnified. No matter how high the level of tacit understanding was, it was impossible for them to be completely in sync. Even if they were to achieve a completely interlinked state of mind, their strength and physical fitness couldn't reach a completely identical level. However, if not completely in sync, then it meant that there was a flaw. Even though Kusanagi's sword cut his throat, Freya still didn't understand how Roger had done it. The three of them had trained together for thousands of years. How could there be a flaw? Freya could not understand this point and had no way of knowing the answer. After killing Freya in a flash, Roger turned his gaze to Fred. Persimmons had to be crushed, and the enemy had to beat them to death. Since Freya was dead, then Fred had become that soft persimmon. However, just as Roger changed his attack target, a tornado that far exceeded the previous one appeared instantly, sending him and Shadow clones flying. The tornado that was dozens of meters in diameter was like an out-of-control giant dragon raging wildly. Black clouds instantly shrouded the sky, and the whole world seemed to have entered the night. The heavy rain poured down, and the giant tornado was getting bigger and bigger. A few seconds later, Fred and Freyr walked out from the eye of the storm, their bodies shining with a dazzling light blue light. Are you finally going to fight with your life on the line? Chapter 99, Buddha Descent. Even with just his eyes, he could tell that Freyr and Fred were planning to fight with their lives on the line. Their domineering aura was leaking. No, it was their energy that was leaking. The light blue light shining on their bodies was not just a pretty visual effect but tangible energy. In this apocalyptic scene, two men with spears in their hands and glowing bodies walked out. As long as their intelligence had not been blown away by the hurricane, even a fool could tell that they were angry, and they were very, very angry. Therefore, after discovering that Freyr and Fred had displayed such a domineering aura, Hogun did not hesitate and immediately arranged for Asgard's warriors to retreat. As for Roger, Hogun felt that he did not need to remind him. Roger was not surprised by the intense reaction shown by Freyr and Fred. Although he was not sure how long the three Storm Brothers fought together, they had been together for at least hundreds of years, judging from their age. Outstanding bonds could form from creatures who have lived together for hundreds of years. Even if it were the death of pet dogs who had accompanied him for hundreds of years, they would still have a crazy bond. This kind of example was not rare even on Earth. Roger clearly remembered that there was a man named John. Because his dog was killed, a total of 377 people were killed. Among them, there was no lack of people who killed people with pencils. A famous dog caused this incident. Of course, Freya was not a dog. Freyr and Fred were not John. But no matter what, it was normal for Freyr and Fred to have some excessive reactions. Although Freyr and Fred, who could be said to be a waste of energy, seemed very irrational, this was also the best choice they could make at the moment. In the case of three people working together, they were unable to defeat Roger in close combat. Moreover, they were missing one person after Freya died. Freyr and Fred completely gave up the idea of fighting with Roger in close combat. The rain fell like a full moon, and along with those hurricanes that could cause people to fly, the originally hot-blooded battle environment instantly became miserable and sad. To prevent himself from being blown away by the hurricane, Roger gathered his chakra on his feet, making himself firmly stand on the ground, and then put away the sword of Kusanagi in his hand. Since the enemy had already started to use their big moves, he naturally had to use them too to repay the enemy. Wood release wood human technique. The ground under Roger's feet began to shake as a 20-meter-tall wooden sculpture crawled out from the ground, just like a messenger of death who crawled out of the abyss. To create his own style, Roger deliberately covered his whole body with a light blue chakra coat, adding a visual effect that only VIP-honored guests could have. In addition to the dazzling visual effect, he deliberately set the place where wooden sculpture climbed out at his feet and stood on the top of wooden sculpture's head when it came out. Although they still did not know the ultimate move of the legendary Let You Have Two Hands, this did not affect him to experience the effect of shrinking low-quality simple experimental equipment in advance. In this battle arena, I won't allow anyone to be more pretentious than me. Standing on top of the wooden sculpture, Roger looked down at Frere and Fred. His expression was arrogant, and his posture was gaudy. Seeing Roger call out wooden sculpture again, Hogan, who was originally retreating, stopped. His heart was immediately filled with a sense of security. As one of the people who had seen wooden sculpture beat up the destroyer, Hogan had blind confidence in wooden sculpture. Compared to Hogan, who was filled with a sense of security, Frere and Fred frowned deeply. They initially thought Roger was just a warrior who was good at close combat. However, wooden sculpture's appearance completely broke their image of his. How could a person who could summon such a giant creature only be good at close combat? Moreover, they felt a highly dense aura of life from wooden sculpture. Although the appearance of wooden sculpture shocked Fred and Frere for a moment, it could not extinguish the anger of revenge they had for Freya. Even if the father of all gods stood before them now, they would still not give up. Whether they could win or not, if they did not even dare to fight, then even if they finally left here alive, they would leave a very obvious psychological flaw in the future. Without hesitation, Frere and Fred raised the spears in their hands. The torrential rain seemed to have a life in an instant, and billions of raindrops attacked Roger like bullets. Along with the rain, there was also a hurricane that could destroy houses and raze trees. At this moment, Roger seemed to have been pierced by the entire world, and all he could see were enemies. Roger did not pay attention to the rain, which was like bullets, nor did he care about the hurricane, which was like a natural disaster. He stood motionless on top of wooden sculpture's head, and the light blue chakra coat set him off like a god. The torrential rain did not make the light on his body fade, and the hurricane also did not make his figure sway in the slightest. After standing in place and letting the rainstorm hurricane attack for more than 10 seconds, he controlled the wooden sculpture under his feet. To make wooden sculpture more powerful and improve wooden sculpture's attack power, Roger put on a chakra coat for wooden sculpture and, at the same time, added the same effect as Chidori Current's electric snake twining on his body. 25 meters tall huge body, light blue chakra coat, and the most active electric snakes. This wooden sculpture had reached the peak of his life's beauty and strength. Then, under the gaze of everyone, wooden sculpture began to run forward. When everyone thought wooden sculpture would directly charge towards Frere and Fred, wooden sculpture displayed a tremendous jumping force and instantly jumped into the air. Looking at wooden sculpture, who jumped high and fell like a meteorite, Frere and Fred did not dare to be careless. The spears in their hands directly collided. In the beginning, the spear's tip only surged out a small finger-sized tornado wind. But when the two tornado winds gathered together, the diameter of the tornado instantly rose to dozens of meters. Roger ignored the giant tornado that was enough to swallow wooden sculpture. A sentence appeared in his mind. Do you remember a palm technique that fell from the sky? The giant tornado was like a roaring dragon that crashed into wooden sculpture, who was falling like a meteor. On this day, Hogan and Asgard warriors saw an unforgettable scene. The heavenly Buddha descends into the world, and all the Buddhas make a pilgrimage. Chapter 100, Sage Mode. Although Asgard's warriors and Vanir's warriors did not know who Buddha was, this did not affect their shock they got from the scene in front of them. A 20-meter-tall behemoth broke through the obstruction and attack of the giant tornado and descended from the sky in an incomparably overbearing manner. Relying on gravity and the huge amount of chakra that Roger burst out, wooden sculpture, who was emitting blue light, stretched out his right hand, and his colossal palm directly pressed down on Fred and Frere. Boom! A huge explosion like a nuclear bomb suddenly sounded, and the entire earth shook violently. When the blast wave from the explosion completely dispersed, Hogan and the others finally saw the scene in front of them clearly. Wooden sculpture, who was more than 20 meters tall, stood proudly. In front of the wooden sculpture was a bottomless pit with a diameter of dozens of meters. Although they could not see the traces of Fred and Frere, it was not difficult to guess the fate of the two brothers as long as they looked at the bright red blood in wooden sculpture's right palm and the two spears that had been inserted into his palm and completely broken. With just a single palm strike, he had utterly wiped out Frere and Fred, who were both famous among the Vanir. At this point, the three Storm brothers had all died. Whether it was Hogan and the others, or Vanir's soldiers, they were all somewhat unable to believe what they saw. Wasn't this too crazy? That was the descendant of sea god Njord, an existence that grasped the power of the storm, an expert that possessed an extraordinary reputation even amongst Vanir and Aesir. It wasn't that the three Storm brothers couldn't die in battle, it was just that the way they died right now was too sullen. They were aggrieved to the point that even Hogan, this enemy, felt regretful. Freya was still a bit better, at the very least, he had died with a bit of dignity. But Fred and Freyr. Looking at the blood on wooden sculpture's palm, Hogan suddenly sighed. He now remembered what Roger had said to him before, a sentence he had not understood. Sir, the times have changed. This era had changed, making even veterans like Hogan have thoughts of retreating. Although they could not accept Freyr and Fred dying this way, Vanir's soldiers still fulfilled their traditional promises, put down their weapons, and admitted defeat. When Vanir's soldiers put down their weapons to admit defeat, the mercenaries they hired suddenly turned against them. We are only here to make money, glory is none of our business. For these mercenaries who came from interstellar pirates and wanted criminals, their glory was not worth a single cent. Therefore, they decisively chose to retreat, or rather, escape. Hundreds of mercenaries immediately scattered, running in different directions in pairs of twos and threes. The mercenaries' actions undoubtedly gave Vanir's warriors a hard slap, completely trampling their remaining glory on the ground. Thus, a battle between Vanir warriors and mercenaries broke out just like that. Vanir's warriors picked up the weapons on the ground one after another, then pointed them at the mercenaries who were still comrades more than 10 seconds ago. Although Vanir warriors were not as many as mercenaries, in terms of actual combat strength, each had the power to fight a few mercenaries one-on-one. Vanir's warriors used practical action to prove the massive gap between professional and amateur soldiers. Asgard's warriors did not interfere in the civil war between Vanir's warriors and the mercenaries. They only lined up near the camp and silently watched the scene in front of them. Under the massive difference in strength, these mercenaries did not last long. More than 10 minutes later, the commander of Vanir came to Hogan alone and handed over the weapon stained with mercenaries' blood to Hogan. After wooden sculpture killed Fred and Freyr, Roger directly sat on top of wooden sculpture's head and began to think about a serious problem. Although the three Storm brothers' storm power was not particularly strong, it had an undeniable nature of natural energy. Whether it was a tornado or a rainstorm, they were not the three Storm brothers' own power. They used the storm power in their bodies to trigger the resonance of natural energy. Then by mobilizing natural energy, they created a tornado and rainstorm that far surpassed their own energy strength. Although Roger did not lack chakra at the moment, compared to the natural energy that filled the entire world, his chakra volume was not worth mentioning. Initially, he planned to cultivate Sage Mode after chakra volume reached the level of two-tailed or three-tailed. However, the appearance of the three Storm brothers made him plan ahead of time. The inheritance of Sage Mode can be chosen in Mount Myaboku, Longdi Cave, and Shikotsu Forest. The exchange price is 400. The system's price for the Sage Mode was not high, and he still had 256 available ninja coins. If he wanted to exchange, as long as he was willing to spend a few months or, at maximum, half a year, he would be able to gather enough to exchange for 400 ninja coins. Changing or not, was this a problem? After seriously thinking for a few minutes, he finally made a decision in advance. Since he had to exchange for it sooner or later, he might as well solve this problem before returning to Earth. It was also good for him to master the Sage Mode earlier. When night fell, Hogan and Roger received the latest news from Thor and Fandral. Like them, when Thor and Fandral attacked the camp, they also encountered the reinforcements sent by Vanir. Although the process was a little tricky, they still successfully took down the camp and completed the established plan. Adding on the initial forward camp, Asgard now had conquered 4 camps and could be considered to have gained an initial foothold. Thor also specially instructed Roger to avoid too merciless killing during the battle. It seemed that Thor was still worried about Roger, worried that he would accidentally do something extreme. Asgard was here to maintain Vanarium's order, not to start an all-out war. Roger did not take Thor's advice to heart at all. Although Odin asked me to assist Thor in maintaining the Nine Realms order, you also know that I am a private detective. Hogan was stunned when he heard the word private detective. Let me put it another way. I am not Asgardian, so I am different from you. I'm not paid for this. So, in the next battle, I hope that we can cooperate in another way. Although Hogan looked like he only knew how to fight, when he heard the word pay, he immediately clenched the wallet on his waist. Everyone had not known each other for a long time, so he should not consider borrowing money. Although Hogan did not speak, Roger understood what he meant. I don't want to borrow money. What I mean is, if you need me to help in the next battle, you can commission me. My fees are very cheap, especially for you. I can give you a discount that you can't imagine.